So from Cedar City representing public at large. Dax, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Dak Mangus, the regional supervisor for Southern Region for Division of Wildlife.
We'd like to welcome DWR staff, Dax and his team, a lot of team from up north. We appreciate you being here and all those that are going to help us answer questions and solve all the world's problems today. We'd like to recognize wildlife board members, current members that are watching online with us: Paula Richmond, Kent Johnson, Bob Christensen, there, and those public that are in attendance, past board members. We appreciate you being here. I'd like to welcome everybody that's watching online on YouTube. This meeting is being streamed live and will be available for viewing forever. Those that are attending in person will be able to provide comments. If you wish to make a comment, fill out the card. If you're watching on YouTube, you should have already provided comments. If you didn't, you can still send them through the website, the DWR website, and it will go directly to the Wildlife Board. So I think that takes care of introductions. Did I miss anything, Dex?
I don't think so. I guess I just want to make sure, reiterate, we're appreciative to the R6 organization for letting us use this facility. It's really nice.
Thank you. We do have a public microphone right here in the center. When it's time for questions and comments, I'll ask you to come up here in the center, state your name, who you represent, go from there. There are microphones wired through this whole room, so please keep any side conversations at the minimum, or because the whole world is watching on YouTube. All right, I need an approval of tonight's agenda and minutes from the last meeting, as the RAC had a chance to review that. Any questions, changes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the agenda.
I'll second it.
And a motion by Chris, second by Bryant. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. I'm sharing the room. Let's see if I can see everybody online. Aye from Bart. That's unanimous. I count. I have 8. That's the sound correct. 3 online, 5 in person. Maths. Okay. All right, Wildlife Board meeting update. I'll provide this. April 30th was the last Wildlife Board meeting. A lot has happened since then. So we met in April. April 30th was the board meeting to approve all the permit recommendations, which were thereafter sent for the draw, and the draw happened, and we already received results for the 2026 big game permit season. So all the things there from the division, we appreciate them getting it out and acting on it. So the first motion that was made was the deer permit recommendations for 2026. The motion was passed unanimously to ask the division to look at reclassifying the Oak Creek unit to a premium unit during mid-plan yield deer plan review. Second motion was to approve the remainder of the permits as presented, passed unanimously. No changes for deer permit recommendations overall. Once lifetime permit recommendations accepted were passed as presented by the division, with the addition of an archery bison permit on the Book Cliffs Little Creek and Book Cliffs Bitter Creek archery hunts. And then passed 4-2. The next agenda item was bull elk permit recommendations, and that was to accept as presented, and that passed unanimously. No changes for elk permits from what was proposed. Pronghorn permit recommendations passed unanimously as presented. Antlerless permit recommendations are done at the same time, even though that draw has not happened. It won't happen until June. The first motion was to reduce the antlerless moose permits on the Wasatch Mountain Salt Lake Timpanogos unit down to 2 permits, and the Morgan South Ridge unit to 8 permits, 1 removed from each weapon type. The motion was later amended to reduce the Morgan unit from 8 permits down to 5, allowing for 3 any legal weapon and 2 archery. So a significant reduction of cow moose permits. The next motion was to approve the remainder of the antlerless permit recommendations. Motion was amended to increase antlerless permits on the Monroe unit from 40 permits up to 60, and that passed unanimously. There was a clarifying motion to allow a non-resident to apply for 1 antlerless permit on the Morgan South Ridge permit. Make sure there was a non-resident draw there for cow moose. CWMU antlerless permit recommendations was to accept as presented with the exception of Deseret antlerless moose being reduced by 1 public and 1 private permit. And that passed. Then we got to the aquatic rule amendments, and that was passed as presented unanimously. I believe that was it for the wildlife board meetings. So, any questions from the RAC on the last wildlife board meeting or what happened there? Pretty good. Everybody drew their moose and sheep permits, right? No. Okay. Maybe next year. We're going to go on to a regional update from our regional supervisor, Dex.
All right, we have a few things to go through since we didn't share a regional update at the last meeting, just in the interest of time and that big agenda. But it looks like we might have another big agenda here tonight. But a few things to go through from the region. Adam will pull that up. We'll start with some things happening in the wildlife section here in the region. Continuing with their mule deer working groups and those meetings and tours. Where our biologists have wrapped up our sage grouse let counts, sage grouse surveys, continuing with big game collar retrievals. So whenever we have a mortality, they go out and pick up those collars and do an investigation. We are seeing, some dry conditions, and we've had a few calls of bears around town. So just a reminder to folks to be bear aware this summer, keep your campsites clean. And then I think just due to drought and water situation, we're definitely dealing with some landowners with concerns with big game depredation on cropland. And our staff are working with folks, and we'll be settling up for this last fiscal year. We go July through June, and we're working with folks to try to mitigate damages and alleviate those damages. We have a couple wildlife biologist vacancies that we should be filling here very shortly. We're excited about that, replacing Lynn Zubek and Mike Wardle. Also, our wildlife staff held a successful lead-free ammunition shooting demonstration in Kanab. Completed opinion J surveys, starting on kit fox surveys and IMBCR, so a bird monitoring survey that we do in the spring every year, as well as prairie dog counts. And our staff installed a silt fence, which kind of blocks the view from prairie dogs and keeps them from moving on to agricultural fields around the Parowan Valley WMA. Moving on to our aquatic section, they're looking ahead, trying to be proactive as far as drought response. I'll be making some adjustments to the stocking plans, putting fewer fish in water bodies that might have a chance to hit dead pool, or where we aren't going to have as much water, and allocating more fish to our stable waters like Fish Lake, where we would put additional fish. As far as emergency regulations on water bodies, those are being evaluated and monitored, and we'll make those determinations case by case, and that will be announced in July if we do make any changes there. As far as our spring netting surveys and aquatics, we're monitoring our lake and reservoir fisheries. Most actually look pretty good. Some of the struggles we do see are probably related to drought and just water availability. They're moving forward with recent efforts to increase species diversity, both warm and cool water species. It's looking good, looking promising. They're working hard to try to maintain viable fisheries despite fluctuating water situations and drought and some of the challenges we face. They've had good success stocking sterile predatory fish in water bodies where we're trying to reduce undesirable species or species that are overabundant. Aquatics folks keep working hard, and we'll hear from some of our aquatic staff tonight with some management plan updates. Kolob Reservoir Extended Angler Survey in 2026 will be, we'll get going in preparation for convening a public committee to review and update the fishery management plan this coming winter. Our Washington County field office and our native aquatics program, they've been doing a lot of good work monitoring those species that we watch, especially there in that Virgin River drainage. We're seeing some good recapture effort on western toads of animals that were pit tagged last year, and then we're recapturing and seeing those animals that have survived. Our folks are working hard to monitor desert tortoises, doing some relocation or translocation on tortoises that end up in problem areas, and doing some weed control to help with tortoises as well. Done some rotenone treatments and to work on trying to help sensitive mollusk populations, and working hard to remove non-natives that can threaten our 3 species, aquatic species in the Escalante River drainage. Continuing with a little bit more of the Virgin River program, the native aquatics. We've had some successful spawning of woundfin, which has been a challenge in the past, and but we're having luck at our fisheries experiment station in Logan. So that's kind of encouraging and can help with the conservation of that species. Stocking some Virgin River chub, and then again removing some of those non-native species like smallmouth bass that can negatively affect native fish. And they've also been doing Southwest willow flycatcher surveys. If you have more interest, want more information on some of the Virgin River program, we have an office there near Quail Creek Reservoir, and Melinda Benyon there does a great job, and she would be happy to talk to you more and tell you all about Virgin River species if you have more interest or have more questions there. Moving to habitat section, it's been a busy restoration season, a busy spring. We are just thrilled to see, I know we're still in a tough situation for drought, but we are thrilled to see these storms that we have been getting. Especially like on the Monroe Mountain fire rehab work, where it can really make all the difference in the world as you get some of these late spring storms and the snow to help with all the reseed efforts. It's been a busy year for fire rehab, and we flew a lot of seed on Monroe Mountain, the Forsyth, the France Canyon fire, and our folks have been working hard on Highway 18 mastication project, grinding up pinyon juniper, gooseberry, yellow jacket, and more. If you go to the WRI website, you can see all kinds of projects that our folks are working on. We have awarded grazing contracts on a lot of our WMAs, our wildlife management areas in the region. Most of that grazing started May 15th. We still have a couple more grazing contracts that will be awarded as a grass bank to help folks that have been producers that have been displaced due to fire or drought. We have a new NRCS partner biologist, Casey Hewlett, who can help with habitat improvement projects on private lands, or if folks have ideas for projects on their federal grazing permits. We'll get with our habitat staff, get with Kason, and he can help you with probably some programs there. We've started irrigation on some of our WMA properties, and we're using irrigation and grazing to implement some of the habitat management. Pretty excited about all the things we have going on division lands and on public lands in the region. Moving to our outreach section. In the last little while, they've had some really successful events. They had a fishing derby in St. George, a special needs fishing day, and that's really neat. Share that experience with folks that have special needs, that have challenges. Every Kid Outdoors event, the NASP, the National Archery in the School program, had the Western Regionals, the Utah Hunting Skills Challenge. Again, that modern hunting ammunition or lead-free workshop. Our outreach folks worked together with our wildlife section on that. They conducted a desert tortoise viewing event. If you're wanting to see Gila monsters, your window's closed and you better get out before they go back underground for 10 more months. Upcoming events, our outreach folks are working on Color Country Natural Resource Camp, a program with the Juvenile Justice Department, and a nature photography workshop. So lots going on, lots of opportunities if folks want to get out and get involved and learn and see some new things. Moving to law enforcement, we have some really encouraging news here. We've been really short-staffed for quite a while in Southern region. We had a lot of vacancies, and we're really excited through the most recent recruitment. We should have 5 new officers recruited coming to Southern Region. They still have a lot of training to go through, so it probably won't be until this fall that they actually get out here on the ground, and there'll still be some field training going on, but we'll have new officers assigned to Salina, and the East and West Washington districts, so around St. George area where we haven't had any officers for a while, and then also East Iron County and Beaver districts. So we are really encouraged to get back up to full staff with law enforcement, and it'll be nice to have those officers back in the region. So a lot going on. If you would like to get more information or want to get out and participate on some stuff, RAC members or members from the public, please grab me after the meeting or give us a call at our office in Cedar, and we're happy to work with you. And our employees our staff is working hard. They're excited about the things they're doing, and there's a lot of fun opportunities if folks want to get out and get involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Dex. Any questions from the RAC for Dex? Seeing none. I wanted to apologize. I neglected to recognize the Division Wildlife Director who's here with us, Mr. Riley Beck, sitting way in the back. Thanks for being here. I believe we have another board member hiding back in the back. Gary Nielsen, welcome. Thanks for coming. Sorry I missed you earlier. This is quite a large room. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, Upland game recommendations. We have Ms. Heather Talley, who's our Upland game coordinator.
Heather, I had to turn that mic off, so on top, can you turn that back on?
Can you hear me?
Gotcha. Welcome, Heather. Any clarification or anything needed? Or are you ready for questions?
I'm ready for questions, unless you have anything else you want me to clarify ahead of time.
Any questions from the RAC for Heather on Upland game? Chris?
Not a question, just a request. And I was happy to hear that we're going to get more law enforcement out there, down around St. George. Quail, I know that, game birds cycle and they don't have a long life, and hunting pressure, I think, generally doesn't make a big difference. But out on Utah Hill and out on the Beaver Dam Wash, especially with ATVs, UTVs, those guys are off-road and up and down those washes. Those quail have no chance of getting away. And hunters will just chase those things and shoot up the entire covey. So we hardly have any quail. And I know that a lot of that's part of the drought, but just a request that maybe we could have more law enforcement during the quail season out in that area.
Let's make a note of that for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Heather? All right, questions from the public on Upland game changes. Seeing none. We have online public comments.
So we only had one person that submitted online public comment. They commented on most of the agenda items. They strongly supported the Upland game recommendations. And I guess just a reminder too, if anyone wants to do a comment here, fill out a comment card and we'll get that and get to it.
All right. I don't believe I have any public comment cards on this agenda item number 5. Is that true, Gabe? Then on 5, we'll open it up to RAC discussion on this agenda item. RAC discussion. Ready for a motion? I think Chris is ready down there. Okay. Ready for a motion? I can't make a motion, so you're gonna have to help me out.
Make a motion to pass as presented.
Something by Mike, passes presented,
I'll second the motion.
second by Chris. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Unanimous here in the room. See Bart?
Aye.
Thank you, Bart. It's unanimous. That's number 5. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 6. This is the wild turkey portion of Heather's recommendation. Any clarification needed from you, Heather, on the wild turkey changes?
One thing that I did want to clarify, because I should have put this in the presentation, is that with the selling of control permit vouchers, we would internally change the sex ratio available of those vouchers to the individuals we're giving them to. So right now, all of them are either sex. And if people are able to sell them, we intend internally to go assess the damage with our deprivation biologists, and they would be offered 10% of the offending animals in permits, or up to 15 is the maximum for the vouchers. And then they would split that on a sex ratio, and it would be very fearless heavy on those permits. So we don't want to completely take away the either sex option, just in case there are a large flock of toms on somebody's property. And we want to be able to address that. But most of the time, as you know, with these fall season dates, fall over-the-counter permits, and these fall depredation and control permits, they are to manage a conflict. So we are looking to reduce populations, and so therefore we would mostly issue all or mostly fearless permits.
Okay. Other questions from the RAC on the turkey recommendations? Russ?
Yeah, Heather, appreciate your work on this. You spent a lot of time and we had a few conversations. Don't know how it looks. You know, you talk about paying for damages. You got any idea what that looks like? In the presentation, it talked like you pay for damage on haystacks and seed because they scratch the seed out. How do you calculate that?
That's a great question. So of course, the price of the hay bale would be what determines the price of that compensation. And somebody could make a claim once, and then we would offer them tarps or coverings to make sure that their hay is protected. As far as turkeys extracting seed before it's had time to germinate and emerge, that would be something that the deprivation specialist or their employees would go out, look at that, assess that damage, and see how much the bags of seed are that you lost. And they would replace those bags of seed. As far as the silage goes, we're working with Farm Bureau to get a landowner to agree to a silage study. And we would be able to compensate based on what those calculations work out to be for silage.
That's going to be hard to calculate some of that. Yeah, you know, what I think might be the damage that's going to be difficult, but good luck with it.
Thank you.
One of the things that, well, I have a couple of things I'd like to say. Most of you, at least on the board, know that I had some turkeys destroy a paint job on my pickup. And so right in my carport, so I'm not too happy about that. So turkeys aren't really popular today. And there's no avenue to fix that. You know, it's like if you had some juveniles come destroy your paint job, you'd try to get them to pay for it. But in this situation, these turkeys, there's no avenue for me to fix that. I think maybe we could look at something like that because they are a little destructive.
They definitely can be, and that's why we do have those definitions in the turkey depredation rule for issuing control permits and vouchers for material damage and for other personal and private property. And as far as the situation, of course, that we also have to abide by city limits constraints, and that's also a concern. But our hope is with the multi-prong approach that we're taking with this new depredation changes, that we can help avoid some of those conflicts by being able to take the other measures that are offered before it gets to that point.
Well, and that kind of brings me to the second part. Well, on the permits and the landowner being able to, you know, do much with the turkeys, we can only hunt them from August 1st.
March 14th.
But yes, middle of March. And so in the summertime, which is when really they do most of the damage, at least to the locals in my area, except in the winter, they get on some of the guys' haystacks, but, there's no, just kind of have to leave them, I guess, that we do. And so a little concerned about that. And the other thing is, from your March 14th to your at April, whenever you're,
Limited entry.
yeah, and you and I have discussed this. That is the time that we, on our private, that hunt them on these permits and maybe push them back onto the public land. But because you lay off from them, they nest on the private.
Sure.
So, it seems like I would like to make a proposal or somehow we could change that and allow us on the private to hunt those. And I know you're concerned about the nesting and different things, but it seems to me that if we allow them to nest on the private, they're gonna stay there. That's home.
And I know you're in an incredibly unique situation as well, where there's such a patchwork of public and private, and that leads to some difficult situations. And what, just for clarification for everybody else, what Kate's referring to as far as nesting. So right now we have the limited entry season runs the second Saturday in April through the last Thursday. And then we have a 3-day youth hunt. And then we have the open general season through the end of May. And then we have a break for June, July. Then control permit or vouchers can be issued from August 1st through March 14th. And we also have the ability to call some fall management harvest hunts from August 1st through February 28th. So we try to rectify most of the problems within those windows, because if we don't have 60 to 70% of breeding occurring before the beginning of the limited entry season, so that mid-March, probably have a mid-March cutoff to that second Saturday in limited entry season, then we could have huge population crashes. And though we do not want to ever grow wildlife on the backs of landowners, and we're trying everything we can to assuage those situations, that is the biological reason for some of these permit season dates. And there is also a 3-day extension to the limited entry season. That's the weekend before limited entry starts for hunters with disabilities. So if somebody is incurring turkey issues during that time, we would prefer that somebody could reach out maybe to somebody that would have that 3-day extension and could kind of rectify the problem with the public permit.
Thanks. Other questions?
I have one other. On the permits, they allow the private. Those are restricted to family or somebody that works for them.
The 3 permits, yes.
Yes, and the problem I have with that is most of the guys I know that have turkey problems, they have no family that care. And so basically the permits don't mean much. The vouchers that you're offering, it would be more, but the free ones, and I would like to see that changed where, you know, if we had a buddy or somebody that we could give them to. But,
Yeah, and I understand that completely. It's a hard situation to be in if you don't have somebody that wants to hunt turkeys. The hope is that people that do have a lot of family members or full-time employees that do want to hunt will have a benefit from increasing the free control permit from 2 to 5 and be able to apply more pressure. And if that doesn't fit in your situation, that hopefully you can take advantage of the control permit vouchers.
And a quick question, are there the mandatory reporting, that's gonna be a new thing? I know there was an email sent out this year requesting mandatory reporting on it.
That was an accident.
Okay.
I apologize.
So what, but going forward, if this proposal was adopted, it was mandatory just like it is for all other tags.
Yes, for limited entry, over the counter spring season and over the counter fall management, not for vacation.
You have a question here?
One quick question. So with these permits that he's getting, or your landowner. So anyways, these permits that your landowners are getting, that they're not hunting, would it be possible if with your handicap or something like that, that you could turn them over to where they could use those?
Not at this point. We don't have a mechanism to allow for anyone except, and it's the same in the big game world too. Just family, immediate family, which is everyone except aunts, uncles, cousins. So you have quite a few, it could be grandparents and things like that.
Thank you.
Heather, I don't remember seeing anything about trapping some of these problem birds. Is that an option?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that with the recommendation for all of these new tools, maybe people aren't realizing that we are still highly focused on prioritizing trapping. So we just have issues sometimes with a really dry winter like we had this year. We had the lowest translocations that we've had in maybe since we started, with only 607 birds.
Because they stay higher?
Yes. And it's really hard also to get them to go into a trap if there's food widely available everywhere. And the walk-in traps have been the most highly efficient of what we've used. So we're just hopeful that we can continue, of course, with trapping efforts as well. In fact, NWTF has used ECP funds to fund both a northern and central region full-time seasonal employee just to conduct turkey trapping. So we have a focused effort there. So.
And so when those work, we're able to transplant them to other areas we may need them in the state or trade them for other
Sorry,
wildlife.
will you repeat that one more time? Sorry.
I say when those do work, we're able to transplant them to places we may need them in the state or trade them for other wildlife to other states.
We haven't conducted a turkey trade in a while, but we have sent about, I think last year was maybe just 20 or so turkeys went to Nevada. The year before we sent about 149 there. And then we've done, the rest of them have been interstate translocations, sending to, I know a lot went to the Southeastern last year.
Rather really quickly, one of the proposals is to allow adjacent landowners also to hunt one another's land, and that's with the voucher. Is that correct? Or those, can they sell those to the public?
They can. So what that is imagine that there's two landowners that have a couple hundred turkeys on them. And individually, they could just get vouchers. They could get 10% up to 15. So they would each get, let's say, 10 vouchers. But if they combine, and then they can hunt each other's properties if they choose to do that. So it's not a mandatory thing by any means. They would have to apply in writing as a group if they wanted to be a group. But that way, anybody that they give their vouchers to, same as they would as an individual, could hunt both properties. And the point of that is to try to push the birds off of private altogether instead of chasing them from one private property to the next, and to help remove the offending birds.
My fear is that it incentivizes large blocks of landowners to almost become a hunting preserve for turkeys, where they're selling their vouchers, and did that come under consideration?
Yeah, in fact, would you like me to share the table I shared at the northern region? Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second, because I don't want anybody to be under the impression that this is some kind of an LOA or seeking review. And I know that sometimes that can sound similar. So 1 second, I'll get that pulled up. Sorry, my connection left for a second, so I think we're back now. Okay. Let's do the slideshow. So this is just kind of showing the difference between landowner associations, CWUs, and then what it would be if people just combined together to get these control permit vouchers. And one of the reasons, again, that we aren't so concerned about this turning into some kind of incentivization program is because they're very beardless heavy permits are being offered, either entirely or mostly beardless permits. So for landowners associations, they provide hunting opportunities to landowners in recognition of the benefits and the private properties that provide to wildlife. For CWUs, the intent is to provide income to landowners, and increase public hunting access, and provide protection for landowners who already allow access. And then, of course, for just the control permit vouchers, people get together, it would just be to remove the offending animals from the private property and solve a conflict issue. And for LOAs, of course, they have to have more than 50% of the habitat for the species they're rolling in. With CWUs, they have to have 5,000 acres. This is just for, adjacent landowners that are really sick of just pushing turkeys from one place to another.
Let me ask you a question on that 5,000 acres. Is that part of this thing that got passed where people with 5,000 acres can get elk permits now? Or is the 10,000 still there for the CWUs, or is it now 5,000 and then?
Like you're asking a question about elk though.
It kind of is, but I would
This
think
is
it's
just
all
for
the same thing.
Okay, this is just for CWUs. To have a turkey CWU, you would need 5,000 acres. Elk is still 10,000 to your point for a CWU. But for just a couple landowners getting together and deciding they want to hunt each other's properties, then it would just be a written agreement to that, and then the voucher that's turned into a permit would be printed on it, the boundary of those landowners.
Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no method for a landowner to get a spring limited entry permit.
That's
that
correct.
accurate?
That is correct. So this is all, keeping in mind when we talked about season dates earlier, this is all fall control permit vouchers that can be issued from August 1st through March 14th. And once they hit the cap that they can have, then they're done for that fiscal year. So, and again, it would be mostly beardless, if not all beardless permits.
Other questions? Chris? Any questions from the public on this agenda? Right. Do we have public comment from online?
We had one person comment online that was strongly supportive of the recommendation.
All right, we do have a couple public comment cards. First one, Troy Justinson, and he'll be followed by Troy Henry.
Troy, you'll have to turn that mic on.
Good evening, Troy Gustafson, Sports Fish and Wildlife. I just want to thank the division for putting this together. We know it's not perfect, but we as SFW support the recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Thanks. Troy Henry.
That's a long ways up here. Troy Henry, Utah Farm Bureau. We echo some of Russell's concerns and comments, but at the same time, applaud Heather and the division for the hard work that they put into this. We hear all the time, ag producers have issues with elk and wild turkeys, and it's nice to see the division recognize some of those concerns. We're in one of the worst droughts we've ever seen. Ag producers are looking at the prospects of either fallowing ground, selling cows, or buying hay, and none of them are good solutions right now. So programs like this can be a real lifesaver on years like this. So we fully support these recommendations from the division and ask that the RAC supports them also. Thanks.
Thank you, Troy. That's all the public comment I have on this agenda item. So I'll open it back to RAC discussion. Russell?
From kind of to Gary's point, I wonder if there is a way, and Heather and I she knows I spoke about this, that we could donate some of these tags.
We had a comment card. You thought he gave one on this just before.
I did, yeah.
We'll get it. Thank you.
Anyway, my comment is that if we could donate some of these tags to handicapped, to veterans, and eat birds. I don't know of anybody that would be against that in my world. Anyway, I think we should pursue some of these opportunities and make them available. Okay, if it's just changing a rule, the law, or however, that I think we should try it. So something.
Okay, we're gonna come back to a public comment. My apologies. We'll have Chuck.
Yeah.
Come on up, Chuck.
Raised on the skipping. Chuck Carpenter, I represent the National Wild Turkey Federation. Just want to say thank you all, like a lot of respect and time and energy. I want to first just state that we support most of the recommendations that went out. We support the mandatory harvest. We also support the addition of turkeys in the urban deer rule, so we can give municipalities some tools to, deal with these turkeys. We also support the increased number of control permits from 2 to 5. Landowners that were surveyed last year said that that's something they wanted to see, get a few more tags for them to utilize and get turkeys off their property. With that in mind, though, we do strongly oppose the changes to the R657-69-7. So the commodification of turkeys, making those vouchers, incentivizing, I guess, landowners to be intolerant of turkeys because now they have some financial interest in them. We understand that obviously there are some ag producers, private landowners that do have a burden put on them. Russell, totally get what you're saying. I think your truck's awesome though, with turkey scratches. But we do have some concerns that right now about a third of the landowners that do participate in the voucher program, which is fantastic. Heather and the division done a great job setting that up, but they allow just public hunters to come on with over-the-counter fall tags. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And in other states where this has been implemented, we've seen that opportunity go to zero, and it just goes to a pay-to-play model, and then normal everyday public doesn't have access to those animals anymore. So that's an issue. And also the fact that, yeah, it could create an incentive structure for people to be intolerant. And so we're trying to build tolerance for turkeys, get that social acceptance, and provide some public opportunity. And kind of at the end of the day, we're adding, and we also added turkeys into the conservation easement rule that will pay for some damages that turkeys cause. So right now we've added 3 different tools to the toolbox here, and this is a 4th. And with wildlife, it should be incremental changes that are evaluated to see if it solved the problem. And we see this as a big jump. Like right now, we're kind of adding a wrench and a breaker bar, and we see this as like kind of blowing out the settling torch to blast off the bullhead before we use the wrench or the breaker bar. So we'd like to see some of these things just kind of be implemented, and then let's see if they actually solve the problem or not. And drought got brought up. Because of the drought, we're probably going to see a really bad recruitment year. Turkeys are probably not going to do great this year. So that's also another thing to like make sure that we don't kind of kick them while they're down. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, we're bringing back for more RAC discussion. Heather, can I ask a clarifying question? What public opportunities are there for fall?
Right now, most of the time, the fall over-the-counter management harvest is already on private lands. Sometimes it incorporates limited public lands that we try to make as small as possible because we're really trying to target those kind of animals. And so from our perspective, it's already mostly private property driven, and private property landowners have to give consent for access anyway.
Can you remind me, a rifle be used on those fall months?
Yes.
No,
Rimfire.
Rimfire only.
Rimfire.
Thank you. I was trying to understand RAC members that, I understand their concern, NWTF's about the incentivizing sale of vouchers, but I'm not much of a turkey hunter, but I know you want to hunt them in the spring and it's fun. Fall figured this turkey doesn't seem like it'd be worth that much money on the open market, but again, we're all. Oh yeah, Brad.
I think with the beardless, that's the big difference, because if you paid attention to some of the turkey tags that have been sold for the bearded turkeys. They went for over $1,200 a month this year. So, if it was that, it would be.
If it was like a spring bearded tag, it would be different in your mind.
I think for a bearded animal, it would be even a bigger incentive, because I think that if someone's going to pay that kind of money, they're going to want to shoot a bearded turkey instead of a.
And some permits may be bearded, but the majority will be beardless. Is that a fair way to say it?
Correct, the majority or all. So if somebody has 200 beardless turkeys on their property and 2 jakes, they're just going to get 15 beardless vouchers.
We had discussion.
I was just after that. I wouldn't think that chasing a beardless bird would be a big desire for most people in terms of paying big money. So, and you said there's a 15 maximum permit, right? Voucher.
That's correct. It's 10% of the offending animals with a maximum of 15.
And that's if they, even for an adjacent properties.
Correct.
So I guess one of my questions is why do we cut them off if they're going to be primarily beardless during that spring hunt? These other turkey hunters are hunting beardless, and you're cutting the the tags that you're giving out to the landowners. You cut those off in the spring, March 24th, right?
March 14th.
March 14th, and we start hunting limited entry
Yes.
at that point,
In the second Saturday of April.
second Saturday of April,
Yes.
which spring grains all go in the ground. And that's when it's most detrimental to the farmers. And we allow those to push the hens off, which will drive the toms with them. Why don't we allow them to just stay status quo with that full season until the end of May, and then cut them off for 2 months to keep them off? Would help both that broad spectrums. Pushes them off the private ground back into the public for the public hunters, and it satisfies the farmers on the other hand of keeping the spring grain in the ground, which in turn this year, you put spring grain in, it's cheap. A bag of grain's not a lot of money, but at $6 a gallon for diesel fuel to put that in the ground, now you're talking big money. In order to have it tore up for a couple of hens that you could have somebody push out of there. And with Russell's comment, I do agree with, to make the rule of there with those family tags, open that up for the handicapped or the disabled vet or the veteran, along with the family. Because, as Russell alluded to, he doesn't want no dang turkey. He's got enough of them. He's seen enough turkeys, but he might know somebody in his area that is somebody that's handicapped or disabled or whichever that could go in there and have a great opportunity. There's enough commotion to keep them pushed out and help drive them away. So, maybe that's something we can consider or look at to make that change to help drive those back. It allows it for the sportsman in order to have more opportunity. We have land in our valley right here that pack some pretty big tomes, but they're locked up into those landowners down in those areas that if we could push them out of there, I don't want them in my property, I can tell you that. But I'm stuck to be able to say, I either have to get a beardless spring turkey tag and go chase them out of there, or I'm down there every single night running them out of there in order to keep them out of my spring grain coming up right now. And if I could allow that opportunity for Russell or to let the sportsmen go in there with those tags, not monopolize it in money, but there's not that much money in it, a beardless tag. Nobody wants a beardless tag, but it would help push them out of there.
Is there a motion in there you'd like to make? Anyone?
I'll make a motion that we pass it as is, but with the recommendation that the DWR look into a way to allow those vouchers to be used by kids or someone else in need of it. So it's just the family of the landowner.
That would be the mitigation.
That would be the
permits?
control permits.
The control
Yes.
permits.
Mhm.
Okay, I have a motion from Brian, as is presented, with the caveat, to ask the division to look at other ways to transfer permits to others. Does that capture it? Do I have a second?
Just others or specifics. I don't think we're gonna get it across if we just do others. I think there's a specific group of people, children, that we can target that would be a little more.
I'd like to see it go to kids or handicap or
Yeah.
even a vet, but I think that's something they can discuss when they discuss it and decide what they can or can't do.
Youth, disabled, and others? Can I say others there?
You know, put others in there.
Not others. Youth or
It opens
disabled.
the door too big.
Yeah, you gotta go two ways.
Okay, do I have a second on that motion?
Second that motion.
Second by Mike. Any discussion or clarification needed on the motion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand, say aye.
Halfway.
Russell votes.
We'll try.
All right, online, I've got Rachel. Yes, Bart. And Brooklyn. I didn't catch it. Both from Brooklyn. Motion passes 7 with 1 no vote or 1 missing vote. That's what we said.
She hasn't had that.
Did
Which
you?
one did?
I did say no. Did you catch that?
Bart said no. Okay, Bart. Tell us why you said no.
I concur with the comments that were made earlier that we're doing a whole bunch of things at one time instead of checking to see if 1 or 2 is sufficient. I also don't agree with the commodification any more than we already do of this. And I think that we should be more measured. I think that, you know, if this is a drought year, we will have impacts to turkey as well, not just to irrigation and crops. So, I mean, we're only thinking of one thing, which is, you know, pretty standard, I think, in how we do things. And we're not actually thinking about the wildlife. That's what I think.
Thanks, Bart. Brooklyn, are you there? Can I get your vote on that motion?
Yeah, I did vote. I put my hand up.
Okay, I apologize. I missed that.
No, you're
So
good. I
motion
was just-
passes 7-1. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on. Thank you, Heather, for all your hard work on that. Number 7, agenda item. CW use of public land variance request with Randy Joyce. Aaron, welcome to the party.
Thanks. Good to be here. Seems like I was just here.
Make sure your microphone's on and close to your tall self.
Just for- Can you hear me? Should I try and push the button?
I think we can hear you.
All right, I'll just talk. I can kind of hear. I just have one point of clarification. If you looked at the CW Advisory Committee meeting on these public land, or CW using public land, got a good impression of everything that's gone through. In the packet, though, for the racks, we put an old map for Green Canyon rather than what was recommended to this advisory. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on this. If you look on the north end of that red boundary line, you can see those green parcels of Forest Service. The map you got in your packet included those, and that was an error. They are not included. So for Green Canyon, the boundary goes around those 2 green parcels. There is some orange trade lands to the north of the highway. That's Blacksmith Fork Canyon. It's not really a highway, but north of the road. The only public land that would be included in this proposal is that tiny 40-acre square to the south. That is landlocked and not accessible to the public. So that's just a point of clarification. I'm happy to take any questions.
On that one, there in the, that you said about how it's been in Blacksmith Fork.
Yeah. Historically, they used the road as the boundary, and so it did include
include, I think that eastern portion of forest. Remembering it right, but one of those two was included, if not both. And they gave an extra buck tag in lieu of that, plus the trade lands. For this renewal, they want to just not have any forest as part of their boundary. And I think take that buck tag back as a private tag. They'll still leave their trade lands accessible.
I have a question on trade lands. Have we made any headway with marking or indicating those trade lands on the ground?
Yeah, so we changed the rule last year, 2 years ago, that requires that trade lands be marked as open. And the CWMU Association actually has a template sign that they can make available to CWMUs. So those lands would have to be posted as per the legal definition of posting: corners, access points, waterways. With these signs, they're green. They would say CWMU trade lands open for whatever species they build for. Typically, whatever, if it's a deer and elk CWMU, the trade lands would be open for deer and elk hunting. A lot of CWMUs just want public access on those trade lands for other things. Sometimes they do that in order to do a favorable exchange for the public, including public lands. So it kind of depends on the CWMU. But it is required now that it's posted at those sites.
We got a yellow template still for the CWMU, a green template for the trade lines.
Yeah. So I wish I had an example. I think it still says private property, but they're open for public access for certain activities.
Another question, if the CWMU has accessible public land, but they're only a CWMU, say for deer, what does that do for that land for elk?
Public land, so think of CWMUs as hunt boundary. So in order to hunt that boundary, you have to have a specific tag. In this case, it'd be one of the CWMU tags. Either you obtain from the operator, one of their private tags, or through the drawing. That's a boundary that's only relevant to the species that the CWMU hunts. So in your case, for a deer CWMU, public lands are still public lands and accessible for all other activities. So they wouldn't be closed. You just couldn't hunt deer on there without a CWMU tag, if that makes sense. And sometimes we allow and we try not to include public lands. To be honest, that's the goal is to avoid it whenever possible. But there's some circumstances that make sense to define a boundary. In this case, if the property, the public land is accessible to the public. Or there's a third option if it helps to meet management objectives for the unit. Sometimes list that as sort of a secondary or third reason, but in practice, it's never the number one reason. We don't do it very often.
If a CWMU gets to include our public land, they can mark it with the yellow signs indicating it's a CWMU, but can they mark it no trespassing?
Well, the signs say CWMU and then it lists the species that you need a permit for, and they can't mark it no trespassing.
Okay.
So just to clarify this, and I think I've been told this before, but Austin brought it up again. If it's a deer CWMU on this specific unit and you hold an elk tag, can you hunt the elk in that unit? Just a limited entry elk or whatever? Okay, I thought that was right.
That's maybe not, I think some people see those yellow signs and get a little bit nervous. So we just want to make sure and I can work towards making that a little bit more common knowledge among the public that it's again, a hunt boundary. And if they're near CWU, that's the only access that's limited on public lands. All other activities, camping, hunting up on game, hunting elk, and anything else would be available to the public with proper permit.
It happens up north, Mike, like where guys have a moose tag, say for a whole unit, but they think they can't go on all these CWMUs. Well, they may only be a CWMU for deer and elk and not for moose. So your moose tag would therefore be valid with permission.
Aaron, where there's sitla lands, does sitla actually take a profitable cut then? Do they get Are the profits of having land? I mean, that's kind of their purpose,
No, not, if you, again, it's
just like
Civil
grazing.
does have an agreement with us. I don't remember, I've like kept up on the latest.
Just curious.
So there is something there, but yeah, again, think of it as a hunt boundary. It's not still access things. It's just what permit they need to hunt there.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Thanks, Darren. We'll go to summary public comment.
We had one public comment on this and they strongly supported it.
Thank you. I see no public comment cards from the audience on this agenda item. Is that correct? Okay. We'll open it for RAC discussion. Clarification, discussion, or motion on this agenda item. I'll entertain a motion when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to pass as presented.
Motion by Mike. Pass as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A second by Russell. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Brooklyn, Rachel, and Bart.
All right.
Thank you. Motion is unanimous. Thanks, Darren. All right, agenda item number 8. To be clear, we're gonna do one more agenda item, number 8, with Chad Wilson. We're gonna take a short break. Let her finish the rest if we need to, and then we'll come back for agenda item number 9. All right, agenda item number 8. Chad Wilson, Mammals Coordinator, compensation for lion, bear, wolf, or eagles. Steve to us.
So this was a really short presentation. So all we're doing here is recommending some little amendments to allow the division to designate who can submit a proof of loss form. And then if there's any disputes, we point out who sits on that panel to discuss.
Any questions for Chad on this? Straightforward. Questions from the public? We have a lovely comment online.
One person from the public commented and they strongly supported it.
Sounds good. No public comment cards. We'll open up for RAC discussion. Any discussion needed on this change? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass that.
Motion by Chris to pass as presented.
I'll second it.
Second by Brian. All those in favor, raise your hand. Say aye. It's in the room. Yeah. Yes from Rachel. Yes from Brooklyn. Bart.
Aye.
Thank you, Bart. Motion passes 8-0. All right, that ends agenda item number 8. We are going to take a 10-minute break and come back for agenda item number 9. Please make sure to fill out the green comment card. We will reconvene at 7:17. And this is a recommendation from the division. Anything you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, if I can, I'll just maybe let you know how we got to this recommendation. So this actually started years in advance to House Bill 469. That's the bill that made it legal to harvest, to hunt or trap cougars year round. Before that, the division would make some recommendations through this process, the RAC board process, to increase cougar permits, and it just wasn't happening to the degree necessary that it made many people frustrated because we couldn't get those passed. Frustration kept mounting to the point where the legislature decided to take action and pass House Bill 469. When that went into effect and we brought recommendations around, there was a lot of people who voiced concerns about using all methods of trapping. So at that time, there was specifically lethal trapping. There were many people that were asking for lethal trapping to be taken off as an option. That did not go through the Wildlife Board, didn't put any restrictions on trapping at that time. Also at that time, the division, we said that we would look at the data, specifically the methods of trapping over 3 years. And if we saw anything in that data that suggests that maybe we could recommend some modifications, that we would. And that's why we're here today, is because that 3 years is gone. What we've seen over that 3 years is that we've averaged 7 lions getting snared, lethally trapped a year on average. Last year was 4. And so we're coming before the RAC, all the RACs, saying that our recommendation is to not allow any lethal sets for targeting cougars on public land. And I know that there's been some concern about how this would affect other trapping going forward and other methods. We feel like in the state code that it talks about, it says that you can hunt and trap cougars. So for trapping of cougars to be taken away, I feel like a law would have to change for that to happen. Other question that came up in other acts is if we had a committee. We did not have a committee. There's times when we use committees. We like committees for many things. On that one, we felt like this was a surgical enough. Like I said, we're talking about 7 cougars on average, or just 4 last year. That it doesn't feel like it's a method that's being utilized very much. Either it's not being utilized or it's not been effective over the last 3 years. And for that reason, we've made that recommendation.
Thank you, Jeff. Open it up for questions. I want to open with a question first. How do you tell, well, first, who enforces trapping regulations in the field?
It'd be our law enforcement section, division law enforcement.
How do you tell, I'm not a big trapper, but how do you tell the difference between a lethal set for a cougar versus a lethal set for a similar sized, a bobcat set, a coyote set? Can that be easily determined?
Yeah, I think for those that have done it a lot, that they can see like the size of the loop.
Like law
A
enforcement?
little bit taller. So yeah, there's ways that you can tell. That's not to say that like we do get incidental take for bobcat sets catching cougars. Like that's a real thing that does happen. I think probably above all, we would, if we saw somebody that was trapping cougars multiple times in the same set, at some point that probably becomes a cougar set, right? Like, so that would be part of the consideration too.
When a qualified trapper in any state, in any division goes out to target cougars, do they generally use a lethal set or do they go foothold?
I don't think there's very many states where there are lethal trapping or even trapping of cougars. So I don't know about other states. I haven't seen data on how much it's happening in Utah over the last 3 years. What we have is what has been lethally, like you're still required to check in your cougar if you've harvested it. So yeah, like I said, all those that are sport harvests that are coming in, it's an average of 7 years. So it's not very many people are.
That average of 7 could be incidental take. It could have been a bobcat set or something else.
Yeah, there's a pretty good chance that a portion of those are bobcat sets.
To your knowledge, are all snares lethal? A lethal set, or can we have snares that are not lethal?
Yeah, there can be some snares that are not lethal.
We're not aware of the percentage of how much that's being used or not used. This would only apply to a lethal snare set or any lethal set.
Any lethal set, yeah.
It's got a picture of a lion on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions?
Dad, when this got changed to open take basically of cougars, did your law enforcement see a drop in having to respond to things like cougar that got caught in a coyote snare under a fence, or in a snare set for a bobcat, where now it's actually legal for somebody to harvest that and maybe not be scared to turn it in and make use of that animal at that point? Because the way I see it in my trapping experience and talking to many of the trappers is trying to take this away for only cougars isn't going to change anything. You're still going to have sets for coyotes under fences. You're still going to have sets for coyotes or bobcats in rocks in places, and you're going to have accidental catches. This would only make it to where that person wouldn't be able to keep it by doing this, and you guys would have to come take it. They'd have to turn it in. Seems like a lot of work for a minuscule amount here that we're talking about. The other thing is this was played off to us as this is going to save everyone's dogs. Well, all those sets for coyotes and bobcats, coyote is a dog. So dogs don't go the same place and jump the same place as a cougar, even when they're chasing one, but they are going to go through those same holes in fences, those same spots in a gap in the mountain where there may be a snare for a bobcat or cougar. So there is a chance that someone's dog's going to get hurt anyway. I've had dogs caught in the past from snares. They survived. I've also caught hounds in traps, and they were fun. So I think we brought about a problem here. It wasn't really a problem, and it kind of been a concern to me that this got brought up the way it did, I guess. So I don't know if there's a question there.
Good question.
I was wondering, you did ask the question at the beginning, but I can't remember what it was.
Other questions?
So I have a couple of questions here. You made mention, you made an assumption that 7 animals or 7 cougars on average were lethally taken. Is that a question that we ask? Is that something we asked? Was it an assumption that it was a lethal take? Did we choke them out with a regular snare? Was it?
No, it's not an assumption. That's part of when you harvest the cougar, you have to come and check it in. Part of the question of that is, how did you harvest it?
Okay. All right. You just didn't seem like you were super clear with the 7 may or may not have been a lethal.
Right. So they were lethal. Whether that trap was set for a bobcat, how many of them were set for bobcats that were incidental takes as compared to how many were set for cougars? I'm guessing that a fair amount of those were bobcat sets that they were actually trying to get bobcat and they got a cougar, much like what Brian said. You know, at that point in time, because of this law, you could just harvest the cougar rather than having to try to either release it if it was not a lethal set, or if it was a lethal set, not being able to keep it. So
okay. My next question is it was brought to my attention that one, you said the legislature, we wanted to go back through with this in 3 years and look at this. Why didn't on March 27th, I was told there was a meeting that the Trappers Association, the houndsmen, everybody that was involved didn't get brought up, or a committee formulated beforehand, before we went down this path. Can you answer that? I mean, is there a valid explanation why we just brought the houndsmen in? We didn't bring the trappers, the fur bearer guys in, you know, bring it to everybody, you know, as a committee, or bring it down the committee path? One, I don't think it should be, but
Yeah, and I think that's how we felt too, is that this wasn't a significant change to have a committee. A lot of times when we have a committee, it's actually on a management plan. This is a rule change. Like I said, it was a small amount like this. This isn't really affecting the amount of lions that are getting harvested. It doesn't feel like there's very many people that are utilizing lethal sets for cougars.
So why make the change?
So
What's the benefit?
Yeah, and I skipped that when I did my review. So there's a risk, right? Anytime that we're out on public land, there's a risk, and there's a risk to hounds. There's a risk to pet dogs and any dogs. And is that risk minimal? Maybe, but still the amount of feedback, we've been getting feedback on this of like, hey, can we change this since this law went into place? And since the board said, no, we can do lethal sets, we get constant feedback from multiple groups. And it just felt like it was a place that would help ease their minds and take that risk away from them out on public land.
So under a risk analysis perspective, this has been going on for 80, 90, 100 years. We've been trapping this way since we tied wire, snares that way. As a risk perspective, as we all know, these things been in the forefront for years. So why is this just to appease something or someone or the legislature on making the rule change?
Yeah, and to be clear, it wasn't the legislature that asked us to look
I
at
thought
it.
that's what you said.
The legislature made the change, and then the board said
Oh, okay.
that, and then we
Sorry.
committed that we would go back and look at the data. And I think that that's what's bringing this recommendation back as much as anything, is we made a commitment to look at the data. We looked at the data says this isn't an efficient, effective method of getting, or one that's not being utilized to harvest cougars. And with a risk and a fear of risk on this side, those three components, that's what brought us to this recommendation.
Yeah, when you're talking about, we've had this brought up ever since the law got changed. Was this brought up specifically to lethal snares when the law got changed? Or was it brought up that, can we change something to do with killing cougars wide open? And then when this new study went into effect, that's when the part about the lethal snares really blew up, is what I'm feeling, but I'm asking you if that's kind of how it went.
But I think if you look back, the conversations were there back when that law changed. I went to lots of RAC meetings as a private lands guy. Darren gets to see now, but I remember Darren being there, and there were people asking, can we exclude lethal traps? So I know that was something that from the very beginning that people were concerned about, was having that amount of lethal trapping out there for cougars. The decision was made not to, but yes, we've since that point in time, I would say that we have received it for all trapping, but most of the focus is on lethal trapping.
So it was more just for the snares from the very beginning that they came to you for.
Yeah, that was for sure what their highlight was.
My understanding, hunting's protected in Utah under Constitution with propositions. Is trapping considered equal with that as a protected right?
Yeah, trapping would be a form of hunting.
And can you tell me the process when someone wants to get a trapping or fur bearer license? What do they have to go through to get that license? Can I get one tonight myself?
Might have to defer to Darren. You have to go through the class, the fur bearer class. Yeah, so there's fur bearer harvest, like hunter safety. You need to do that.
What is that? I can't just go buy some snares over at Cal Ranch and run up on the mountain and lay them all over without having a fur bearer license.
You could for coyotes, and you would have to have a trap ID tag on your trap. So if it was a snare, you'd have to have that ID.
Yeah, Chad, does this proposal doesn't apply to the government trapper coming into those units though, right? He can still use lethal sets, which I think is where all of this originated from. You know, this outcry for snares has come from this study that we're doing and bringing this government trapper in and setting snares. I think that's kind of what has brought the attention to this is that. So I don't know if, you know, if we pass this proposal, it's still not changing. Our government trapper doesn't have to follow that change, correct?
Yeah, this would just be for sport motorists. So
It's my understanding, talking to trappers, and I'm sure these guys here tonight will be able to tell me more, but I don't think that a lot of trappers are going after mountain lions. There's really no financial, you know, bobcats is where the money's at, coyotes is where the money's at. Is there money in mountain lions? I don't know that that's a big incentive for them. Anyway, I'm sure I'll hear more from that.
To be clear, Chad, this doesn't stop the appearance of lethal sets on public land because a rancher could still do it, a grazer, private land is still gonna have them, or any other study government trapper could still have them on public land, correct?
yes.
Art, you have a question? Go ahead. Maybe. Raise his hand. Bart, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
I got you now.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting some garble from your end, but can you hear me clearly?
It's like a 7 out of 10.
So
We lost you.
I think this is a good idea. I've heard some comments, a lot of support for the trappers, and I understand that. I think it's about time. I am one of those people that are concerned about what the division did, or they're not the division, but the legislature did. And I hear that all the time from people. And those of us who are in watchable wildlife and who go out and don't hunt and don't trap, but try to enjoy public lands, which is our right to do, always have the specter of your dog getting caught in a trap, which has happened to me and happened to multiple of my friends. So I think this is about time, and I think it's a good idea.
Art, other questions, Russell?
Yeah, is there a distance from, you know, a public road or, you know, I guess I'm just thinking to myself, if it's dogs we're worried about, you know, people walking with a dog, maybe we should put a distance from a, you know, main trail, but dogs, you know.
Yeah, there's not a distance requirement, but generally that works itself out because if you're a trapper and you're trapping it somewhere and you're catching dogs, then you're not getting what you set out to get, right? So we get some of those, like we have those incidences, like I live around the Wasatch Front, you'll see them on the Wasatch Front, we'll get reports of that. And if you talk to the trapper and say, hey, this might not be the best place, and he says, yeah, I agree. Usually he's already decided to move on to somewhere where it's less likely to catch a pet.
Thank you. Other questions? All right.
I was just gonna go back to my first question when I kept talking. Anyway, I see Gabe in the back of the room. Have you guys seen Les have to respond to things because of the law where they can just bring them to you now and catching something that wasn't targeted?
So I can this has been going on for 3 years, right? So I can go back 3 years prior to that. I haven't been called out in 3 years to go help a trapper, but that by itself was uncommon. That was getting more and more uncommon for people calling you out. They were just handling themselves. But I have seen there are a lot of trappers that are still letting the lions go. It's not like every lion that's getting caught is getting killed. There's a lot of trappers that are catching them and releasing too.
Thank you.
Questions from the public? If you have a question, we'll do comments shortly. Any question, come on up. State your name at the center microphone and ask your question, please.
My name is, excuse me, I'm dry again already. My name is Kelly Lair. First of all, I just want to clarify one thing. And I know snares there's a misconception on snaring, but we talk about cougars getting caught in bobcat snares. I can guarantee you none of those cougars was caught in a typical bobcat snare. Most bobcat snares got a loop with a 6-inch diameter maximum. Lions don't go through that small loop. They'll go over them or around them, but they don't go through them. I just wanted to clarify that. If there's incidentals, it's probably in one separate coyote. Okay, just for the record. But anyway, I do have a question for Chad, and if I wouldn't have been a houndsman most of my life, I wouldn't have liked I dared to ask this question, but the harvest over the last 4 years has equated to 1.2% taken by lethal means. And anyway, a very well-known and respected government trapper and houndsman from this area once said that even your wife's poodle could tree a lion in the right conditions, which is very true. But the question I've got is if only 1.2% of the lions were taken with the aid of poodles, would that be a justifiable reason to outlaw hunting with poodles?
I think I get where you're going with this. And it is like, I hear a lot of people saying that viewpoint of like, it's so little, why ban it? And then there's the other side of a lot of other people that say, if nobody's using it, why allow it? And so I think it just goes back to the risk part. A lot of people just feel at risk.
Okay, well, I think there's very, very few people that's really targeting them. But I kind of view that as they wanted to be able to do this for many years, and they probably feel like it's almost a once in a lifetime chance for the few that is actually targeting cougars with a snare. And it's such a small group. I mean, there isn't very many harvested that way, but there's not very many people trying to catch them that way. So I feel like we'd be taking that away from a very small group that, to me, are as important as an archery hunter would be to hunting with any weapon. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I guess I'd say that I don't feel like we're taking that away, like it would be on public land, but they'd still be able to look for those opportunities on private lands or to do that.
How much private ground is accessible to the average Joe trapper?
Yeah,
in Utah, there isn't very much.
It might be difficult, but there's still an avenue there.
Thanks for your questions.
Kelly, while you're still up, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
With your snaring experience, would a hound dog be in more danger from a cougar snare or from something set for a coyote and a bobcat?
Well, we'll get to that point sometime tonight, but we would like to recommend a different type of a snare. It's with a relaxing lock on it and a heavier cable, which isn't going to kill your dog. I mean, unless you got a dog that's just crazy tied out on a chain or on leash, but I feel like everybody has a little responsibility, even the dog owner when he's, in the field should have control over his dog by the means of a leash or having what they call a distance. I agree that houndsmen can't do that, because I was a houndsman for most of my life, but you have the responsibility of teaching them to train them to be leash broke or tie them out on a chain so they get accustomed to that. And then they don't fight a relaxing log snare. Well, I've had hounds caught in my snares. I've had my little Brittany Spaniel has been caught several times. He just stands there, waits for me to come and let it go. But you might say he's conditioned to that, but the very first time he was ever caught, he had been nothing but leash broke, he got caught in one and stood right there. You
I
know,
guess my whole point is maybe someone like you would be someone that should have some say into how this goes.
well, we personally like, or really as an organization, we would really like to have some say. Thank you.
Bart, did you have another question?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment. I can
We're almost
save it
there,
for
Bart.
discussion.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public, Troy?
Roy Justice is Sports from Fish and Wildlife. Chad, you alluded to saying it's really not effective. I know Phil's here, or maybe you can answer, how many, this was public take, how many in UDAF or in the study were taken by snares versus trap?
I don't have that exact number off the top of my head.
Bill,
It is,
just ballpark me.
it is more by snares on that study than traps.
Troy, 75% snare.
Okay, so they are effective. There's a reason why.
What was that percentage, Troy?
75.
75?
Yeah, it was-
75%. Other questions? From the RAC anymore? Okay, we'll go to public comment received online.
We received one comment on this agenda item and they were strongly opposed to the recommendation.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna open it to public comment. Thank you, Chad. Stay close. First we'll have Brett Guyman, be followed by Scott Christensen. Coming up to the center microphone. If you're representing yourself, we're gonna time you at 3 minutes. If you're representing a group, we can give you 5 minutes, and we're gonna try to hold everybody to that, so we can get through everybody. Appreciate it.
Oh, it wasn't first. I was hoping it wasn't first. Here we are. Brett Guyman with the Utah Houndsman Association. First of all, I want to say thanks for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I think, you know, trapping has been around since, before this state was formed. We need to preserve that heritage as well as that tool. I think it's an effective means to manage wildlife. As has been alluded to, we were nervous about lethal snares. Sorry, I can't lean over. Anyway, we were concerned about the use of lethal snares since House Bill 469 was passed, mainly due to the fact that, we're concerned about our dogs, letting them go and not knowing what's out there, not knowing where these sets were set. Obviously, that's a concern. The majority of lions in Utah have traditionally been harvested from hounds, and there's been several people, myself included, who have kind of stayed away from areas that we knew there were snares set in just for that reason. And so, there's this perception out there that the houndsmen want to see trapping go away, and that's the farthest thing from the truth that you can think of, because my thought is, and a lot of other houndsmen is, as soon as trapping goes away, guess what's next? Hounds is going away. As soon as hounds go away, guess what's next? Trapping's going away. We don't want to see either of those things go away. A trapper's got just as much right to be on the landscape doing what he has for a passion as I do as a houndsman, and I recognize that. I think there's some things that we can put in place to make this amicable for both groups. It seems like we get to where we are at each other's throats in public. I hate to see that, because we're all sportsmen. We all should be having each other's back, so that when the antis, the guys that actually want to take what we love away from us, we should have a unified voice against those guys. I love the idea that the trappers, I'm hoping they're going to bring it up tonight. They've floated a few ideas with the relaxing snares that Kelly talked about alongside the larger cables. I think that's a very reasonable proposal from the Trappers Association. I appreciate them proposing that, and I'm hoping that, and I think knowing Kelly's background, that he's doing that out of respect for our passion as well. as well as, the long-term viability of trapping. So, we're supporting that proposal or this proposal that the division's putting forth. But I would include, if you do hopefully pass this proposal, that you would include the statement or the directive to the division to get with the trap. We've been a little bit nervous with the ambiguity in the term lethal set. Like, how do you define that from a law enforcement perspective? How do you enforce that? So if I put myself in a trapper's situation, man, I don't know, man, that's a risk I'm taking, setting a trap, knowing that if I catch cougar and it's lethal, I could end up with a citation. So I think that needs to be cleaned up. So we're supporting that, but with the recommendation to you to take to the to give to the board, the wildlife board, that the division gets the Trappers Association involved and gets the Houndsman Association involved and anybody else who has a stake in this, and define what lethal is. Like I said, I love the idea of relaxing locks and the larger diameter cables so that we can, get this ball rolling. The other thing I wanted to say was in previous RACs, it's been discussed that there may not be a problem with, the lethality of the sets. We have 11 confirmed cases that we've documented where hounds have been caught in lethal snares. And I don't know if that's from the study. I'm not 100% sure where those are coming from, but what I can tell you is we as houndsmen have always got our dogs caught in traps. In the past, all we've done is broken those leg hold traps. The dog gets out and we go on our merry way. And since snaring for cougars became legal, ever since that came out, we've been hearing more and more from our members. This is bad. This is bad. We're getting, our dogs are at risk. And the other thing that people have said, and I'll wrap up, sorry, I'm taking so much time. The other thing that people have said is, there's always an inherent risk turning your dogs loose on public land, which is true. But we as houndsmen do a sort of risk assessment every time we turn loose. If I've got a lion track headed towards the highway, or if I've got a lion track that just crossed the interstate, I'm not going to turn loose on that lion track because I made the decision that it's not worth it to lose my dog getting hit by a car. This is kind of unknown, and there's always unknowns out there. But this proposal, with some modifications to make it, I don't want to tread on these guys. They need to be out enjoying their passion as well as I do. But with some modifications, I think we can make it work for both groups. Thank you.
Christensen, be followed by Gavin Vogler.
I type mine out because I can ramble. Unless I create an organization, I have to represent myself. So that's fine. But I just came tonight to express my concern about efforts to eliminate the use of lethal snaring in Utah. This is a difficult topic, and I have a lot of friends on both sides. I kind of echo a little bit with the houndsman that we definitely don't want to push that anyway. I think we all share the same goal of wildlife populations. Mine always comes back to a healthy mule deer. That's my passion. I'm concerned that this new rule is creating a division between houndsmen and the trapping community that doesn't need to exist. There's disagreements about how we ought to manage it. I would hope the Houndsman Association would get together with the Trapping Association and have conversations. I'm a relatively new trapper. I started about 2 years ago, and I've yet to have a trapper, an old time trapper, teach me how to snare because I'm like, let's just not go there. Let's just work with foot. And we don't want to hurt people's dogs. I can't tell you how many times I've been told that. I just really worry that to me, it's the same topic where that, like I said, mule deer is just in a mess, the entire west. Anywhere from loss of habitat, weather, disease, and also predation. Predation isn't the only, management tool. But I think we need to leave every option on the table. So respectfully, I would discourage that we pass this rule, that we leave it the way it is and let those associations work together to make that happen. Thanks for all you guys do.
Thanks, Scott. Gavin Kovler, will be followed by Troy Justinson.
Yeah, I will take my 3 minutes, but a couple key things. I think that public land is for the public, all uses, people hiking, people walking their dogs, trappers, snares. I think that we take that away that's public land. They all have a right to it. Everyone should have that opportunity and that right. And just take it away from us because there's only a few of us. Doesn't make any sense in my opinion. Because there's a few doesn't mean that we should get the chopping block. Less opportunity, we take it away. Less opportunity for outdoorsmen, outdoors women, all of us. Trappers, we're a dying breed. Our numbers aren't going up very fast. So we take less opportunity. There's going to be less people to get those problem animals in the future. Okay, some fur bearers are unable to meet the time frame required legally with their, their footholds, whether that's a youth, a sports, a school, or me at work. Can't make the hour requirement for a foothold, so I've got a snare. So just because my personal reasons I'm unable to make the foothold legal shouldn't deter me or make me unable to want to go harvest a cougar with a snare because somebody's worried they're gonna get their dog or whatever. I think public lands for everybody. Just want to say that I strongly disagree with the recommended changes. That's it.
Thanks, Scott. Troy, he'll be followed by Chelsea Peck.
Troy Justinson representing Sports and Fish and Wildlife. I understand where the houndsmen are coming wanting to protect their assets. We heard in several of the racks that a lot of these dogs cost 5, 10, 15, 20,000, whatever it is. You know, I'm a dog lover as well. Me and Chris talked about, we have a love for French Brittany's. I also have a 100-pound lap dog that thinks should be a duck dog, but he spends more time on my lap. So I understand that. But I think it's important we point out that as a houndsman, you kind of sign up for that risk. Not only do you run the risk that we've gotten there, but every time you turn that dog loose, you run the risk of that dog being killed by a lion or a bear. And I bet, I mean, if we're being honest and be truthful with each other, those numbers are pretty similar. You know, pets or dogs lost, by, actually what you're pursuing, or even dog fights underneath the tree. I think this has gone a little too far. I think, as many of you guys have pointed out, and others in this group, and especially the trappers, is there's a way to mitigate this without doing a statewide ban. There's places that aren't set up for lethal traps and snares. There's not. But there are places that are. Well, your brother spends a lot of time there at the Escalante Desert. There's other places, down on the Dirty Devil, wherever you're not going to see a hounds. But this tool is very helpful in being able to target lines and protect our bighorn sheep. Not only are the houndsmen and the trapper are stakeholders in this, but Scott Christensen pointed out too, we as sportsmen are stakeholders in this. We need these tools to help protect our big game herds. So that's what I had asked the RAC here tonight is don't accept this proposal by the division. Make us get a room, make us come back with something that's more feasible, whether it be getting a COR to learn the do's and don'ts of where to put lethal sets or whatever, but please don't ban the set. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Chelsea Peck, she'll be followed by Kevin Albert.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Peck. I am actually a local taxidermist and I went to school for taxidermy. I have really joined the network of taxidermists in the state. I'm part of the association and everything. I'm also part of the Trappers Association, and I also have some of my very best friends who are a part of the Houndsman Association, and I'm right in the mix of it all. So I have mixed feelings on a lot of this, but I will say from a taxidermy standpoint, I have not seen any more lions come in, and neither have any of the taxidermists I've talked to since the rules have changed than previously. I will say the trappers are not typically targeting lions. Like it's been mentioned before, there's just not money into it. And a trapper, if you've been trapping, trappers are doing what they love, but they also put a lot of money into it. So they're targeting the animals that they can get money back from, which is great. Also, my next point is the history of the snare goes way beyond any of us. I mean, they found on record indigenous people using the use of snares. And it may not be the same snares we're using exactly today, but it would be heartbreaking to see a traditional method of taking game lost over a minimal percentage of issues. I also want to say I don't feel like it's any different than you have archery season, muzzleloader season, rifle season. Everybody uses their method that they're most comfortable with. I will never use muzzleloader because it scares me, right? I think that lethal snares and any other type of trapping is the same way. People are going to use what they're comfortable with. They're going to get better at it as they use it. And I don't think it's a big enough issue to try to ban anything. I think that as a sportsman's group would be heartbreaking because that road never ends. I think the focus should be more on education, educating the public, educating trappers on what options are available, educating even houndsmen. If there's a way to educate people there, let's focus more on education so that everybody has an understanding, because I think this all came up out of misunderstanding more than anything. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. Kevin, all right. Come on up. We'll be followed by Daniel McGuire.
Kevin Albrecht, representing myself. I'm just a sportsman. I don't have hounds and I don't trap. But there are many things in this proposal that do concern me. I had the opportunity to serve on WAFLA, which is the Western Association of Wildlife Managers. There's 23 states that participate in that. And they meet every 6 months, and the commissioners or wildlife board representative, every 6 months, they share what's going on in their state. And with that, during that time, those 6 years that I was on there, and I continue to pay my dues and follow, even though I don't go in person now. Every time I've seen a trapping issue start there, it may be minimal like this. Every single time, ultimately trapping went away. It wasn't just the snares went away or the leg holds went away. It was a snowball that could not be pulled back. And that's why I have concern today is because of seeing that firsthand. This was brought up at one of the RAC meetings, and I thought it was a great analogy. A few years ago down on the South Mountains, there was some real issue with many people coming from out of state with a lot of hounds because Utah allowed training with hounds. And so there was many camps that had a large number of hounds. So a proposal come through the RAC to limit that to 16, and eventually that passed. It was brought up that has worked, and I feel that that's the same with snares. Hounds did not go away. Hounds just were limited and managed, and I feel that that's the same that's been brought up today. Snares, I don't believe absolutely have to go away. I think they have to be managed. We have to decide where those locations are. where we can do that. There's a lot of knowledge, not only in this room, but in all of those racks that we can use to do that. It's been brought up in these racks that we should go back to a committee. And I just want to bring up that generally a committee is done before the rack tour. You gather all of that information and take it from a committee and then have a formalized committee. We have got a lot of information here. I don't believe that a full-on committee needs to go on because we've already went through a rack tour. I believe that you can send this back to the division without that committee because of some of the inherent risks that you have seen with how diverse this group may be if you put that in a committee. I think the division has the information that they could come back with a new proposal. So I propose that if you do oppose this, that you send it back to the division to rework it and not for a full committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Daniel? Warren?
You have to leave.
Okay. Tyler Keating? I moved first or not?
Just keep, but you're good.
Tyler Keat. He'll be followed by Terry Abraham.
Tyler Key, Utah Trappers Association. I really wish I could come up here and speak my opinion and stay on task, but I'm sure I'd squirrel, so bear with me. I'm going to read it. So, I took the opportunity to attend and participate in the Central Utah RAC in Springville. I was one of two trappers that used the phrase slippery slope. This phrase was not a favorite phrase of a couple of RAC members. However, after hearing their reasoning, it all made sense. They both stated that they take each issue and address it individually instead of having one thing lead to another. However, the slippery slope idea has escalated into the fear of many to potentially become a landslide when you hear things like, this proposal is a good first step. Or, and I quote, I also encourage the division to continue evaluating Cougar-related regulations and work towards the statewide ban on cougars. And that was said in Springville. Or, and I quote again, I also asked the division to prohibit the use of all traps and snares for mountain lion on public lands. And that was said up in Logan. I agree with the Central RAC members addressing one issue at a time individually. I feel that one proposal has a real potential to turn into a landslide. It was also asked and discussed in Springville if trapping was within the Constitution and if the act of trapping is protected in the Constitution. I truly appreciate the RAC board chair, Brock McMillian, and his board members for putting the challenge out there to find out if trapping was mentioned in the Constitution. So hopefully this answered what Austin was alluding to earlier too. What I found was the Utah State Constitution, written in 1896, added Article 1, Section 30 that took effect January 1st, 21, which established the right to hunt, fish, and harvest wildlife. In Article 1, Section 30, it does not specifically say trapping, it's just presumed. However, in Utah Code 23 Alpha-1-101 defines hunting as to take or pursue a reptile, amphibian, bird, or mammal by any means. The same code defines trapping as means of taking protected wildlife with a trapping device. It also discussed in Article 1, Section 30 that the rules, regulations are set by the Division of Wildlife Resources, and that is what brings me to this point. The division has the power, rights, and authority to change the laws. However, if it's important enough to add it to the Constitution, I hope all thoughts, opinions, considerations will be addressed prior to changing the rules, regulations, and law. Thanks.
Thank you. Great. He'll be followed by Lane.
I'm Terry Abraham. I'm a trapper, a member of the Utah Trappers Association, but I'm only here speaking for myself. I'm opposed to the first part of this rule, to restrict the use of lethal traps on public lands for sport harvest. One thing that I think we've heard here, we've heard from the president of the trappers and from the houndsman, is that there's some common ground. If there would have been some discussion on this prior to the RACs, so, a lot of these questions would have been answered. We probably wouldn't have both agreed on everything, but there is some common ground there. It looks to me like, from what I've heard from the RACs, that the justification of this change is for two things. One, for low take, and the other one is for dog safety. Low take, well, if there's a big game hunt that is a low take, they're not going to eliminate the hunt. Well, they might make some modifications, but they're not going to eliminate it. So I kind of don't see that fits here. The dog safety part, I understand the dog safety. I understand the concern of their dogs, but I don't see what we're accomplishing here. I mean, the private trapper, he's got to change his ways if this passes, but he can go to the private landowner and get permission. He can just go down the road and set his sets out in lion habitat anyway. The livestock, they're still going to have the right. They still got to protect their livestock. They're still going to be out there. I support the ABC out there doing their jobs. So I really don't see what we're accomplishing. Everybody's still going to be out there doing the same thing, maybe just in a couple of different spots. The one thing that I do see that this could be accomplishing is the first step. This is the first step to take our trapping rights. And like we said, and Hounds is right with it. If anybody really questions that, they probably need to watch the other RAC meetings in the comment sections. There was a guy for one group that stated, this is our first step. Our ultimate goal is to take all traps off the landscape. And that should have everybody's attention. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Lane? Will be followed by Kelly Lair.
Hello, guys. I'm Lane Abraham. I appreciate your opportunity to come talk to you guys. First of all, I'm a trapper and I'm a snaresman. I've been a trapper my whole life, almost. My mother said that when I was 5 years old, all I asked for was 2 mouse traps for Christmas. Man, that has led me down an unbelievable path of opportunity. So in my time of trapping, I learned most of my skills by going to the Trappers Association convention in rendezvous, watching demonstrations and watching people teach you how to set traps, how to do it ethically. It's amazing if you go out and spend time in the great outdoors, how much love and appreciation you can gain by that. If you talk to people around here that know me, will tell you that I'm the biggest advocate of opportunity, not only for myself, but for anybody else out there that's enjoying their time of field just as I do. I may not agree with what they do, but I will damn sure defend their right to do it. That being said, the Trappers Association is holding a youth new trapper camp out just down the road here, a couple miles in a couple of weeks. Those new trappers can come and take the online course for their fur harvester education class that you was referring to. It's required to get a trapping certificate, their trap registration number and all that. They can get that at this camp out. At the same time, there's going to be people that are teaching these young trappers how to set a trap, how to do it ethically, and most of all, the most important thing is how much responsibility you gain or you're required to have when you set out a trap. We don't need more regulation. We need more education. So that being said, I'm going to stand with the Utah Trappers Association tonight and strongly oppose this recommendation of, call it what you want, I call it anti-trapping regulation that's been presented. Thank you.
Thanks, Lane. Kelly? It'll be followed by Paul Linder.
Thanks again. My name is Kelly Laird. I'm here representing the Utah Trappers Association. I wish I could speak comfortably like some of these other guys do. I'm pretty passionate about what I do, and sometimes I get a little nervous. But anyway, I've X'd out a lot of what I had on my speech for tonight. It's already been said once or twice, so I'm going to kind of skip through it. But you know, we were as surprised as most everyone was when the Utah State Legislature passed House Bill 469, which basically delisted cougars as protected species. And there was a lot of people that thought we were part of that, but we all know we weren't. But anyway, for many years, some of our members have wanted to be able to harvest a cougar on their own using traps or snares, and this finally gave them the opportunity to try to do that. We don't feel like cougars should be annihilated, but like all wildlife, they need to be managed. And had we been asked, we could have offered some options. Modern tools used in trapping today are probably the most humane and ethical and by far the most effective method of predator control. And there's been kind of a misconception on snares. You know, you guys haven't said anything about it, nor has anybody else tonight, but in the other RAC meetings, there was people discussing the fact they thought that that there was a safety issue for humans with snares, but I can promise you there is not. There is zero safety issues with snares to human beings. But anyway, if harming dogs was a driving force in this new proposal, snares with relaxing locks, commonly referred to as cable restraints, could be required. And, you know, there's been a little question on how do you identify them, but what we would recommend is requiring a heavier cable, and that's typically used for like coyote snaring or bobcat snaring, and with a relaxing lock, and which would make it safe for dogs caught in these snares. But anyway, but they'd be easy to identify for law enforcement or whoever looked at them. But anyway, if you guys have any question that I can answer on that, I'd be glad to when I'm done here. But anyway, if this proposed amendment is rejected, the Utah Houndsman would encourage implementing a required trapping course, which could be similar to other currently required courses, but focus on ethical harvesting of cougars. When we first saw this recommended rule change, we reached out to our members with an email asking for feedback, and we tried not to sway them in any way. The overwhelming response we received was in opposition to this rule change, not primarily because every member plans to snare a cougar, but many see this as the beginning of that slippery slope of losing their privileges one at a time, which has happened in our surrounding states. We oppose this amendment and suggest tabling the recommendation, giving time to evaluate the options, and invite the Utah Trappers Association to be included in the discussions going forward. We as trappers believe in science-based wildlife management that will support healthy, sustainable populations of all wildlife, cougars included. We have watched some of our surrounding states go from science-based to emotion-based predator management, and we hope Utah does not follow that path. Thank you.
Thanks. Paul Linder, followed by Russ Kennedy.
calling him, or most of you probably have seen me on the post office wall, you know, the most wanted deal. A couple of things that I think that we need to talk about is what I'm going to give these trappers credit for what they can do to manage game and especially predators. But they're fighting a lot of things right now. High fuel costs, these trap check laws are make it just that much harder for them to they've got to go. There's a lot of things against them, and they're small, probably the smallest hunting or taking organization we have compared to deer hunters and houndsmen and all that. And so that's where these anti-hunters are going to start. They're going to start out the smallest, and then they're going to work up. And I think with this kind of a law, we're just opening the door for that. And once you let the gas out of the bag, it's just never going to end. I mean, let's not show that weakness of limiting these trappers for especially what little amount of cougars they're actually getting, and I suspect very few hounds too. But let's not go into that. I think we need to not do this, not approve this recommendation. And I'll bet you anything, if you just put all the, well, not all, but some of the houndsmen and some of the trappers in a room and leave them alone with no government invention, they would probably come up with an idea that would be good. And but I just don't want to get down this road where we start picking away at and making it any harder for them than it already is. I know some of the trappers, before this was ever even, they were, when you couldn't kill them, the cougars, they were catching lots of cougars, and they were just trapping. I mean, I'd hate to be the guy that had to say, okay, that snare is set for a cougar. I don't think I want to do that. And I think that puts a burden on the DWR. Was that a cougar snare? Is it I think we're just going down the wrong road. I think let's just table it, vote it down, whatever we want to do. But let's let some education, like some of these guys you mentioned, and let's work together and see what we can do to make something that makes sense. But let's not take that away. Let's not make a hard law or rule. Down the road, there's probably going to just be more ammunition for these hunters, and like I said, the trappers are not passionate. Man, I'm not a trapper. It's hate to see what they have to go through now anyway. And let's not make it harder. Let's work for a good solution.
Thanks, Paul. Ken Kennedy, followed by Ken Strong, and that would be the last comment card I have. If I'm missing one, please set me up.
Hello, I'm Travis Kennedy with Utah Trappers Association. First thing I just want to say is, if we take away snaring, it's just going to keep going. The next thing will be, they won't want us to use a number 3 trap, or they won't want us to use 4 coil traps. It's just another foot in the door for a big picture, and it's going to ruin our trapping way of life. Some people love to hunt elk, some people love to hunt deer, some people love to chase lions with hounds. This is some things that we love to do with our families, with our kids, with our grandkids. This is the way we've been raised. I also want to say is, it's probably the best way right now that there is in the state of Utah to help control the population of coyotes other than aircraft. I have a cousin who is an excellent coyote caller. Maybe excellent coyote caller. And right now he's having a hard time calling in coyotes just because there's so many people out there doing it. And the use of snares is the second best way. Probably now better than calling coyotes, help control coyotes. And as we know in southern Utah, coyotes are running rapid right now. So I just hope you realize that if you take away snares, it's gonna help with the coyote population. Also, I'm friends with a lot of trappers and a lot of houndsmen. And I can tell you right now, 99% of trappers do not want to catch lions. We do not want to catch hound dogs. I do not know anybody that wants to catch a lion. We don't even want to see him. With that said, the last few winters, the population of lions has went down, so there's still plenty of lions out there. I also want to say, Kelly here and all the presidents in the past of the Utah trappers have always done a great job educating not only young trappers, but old trappers and how ethical we should set traps and snares. And I know that they'll continue it, and we always put it as a top priority to educate it. Young kids, old people, and all trappers to do the best job we can and staying away from trails where people use to walk their dogs or whatever else. We do educate trappers on that. So that's just what I want to say. I oppose this ban because it's just, talking to some of my friends in Nevada, let one little foot in, the door's gonna open for other things. And I see this, other people see this, and I'm like, oh, well, they got away with snares. They've done away with it. Let's do away with something else. And we see it in surrounding states right now. How many states have went to cage trap? We don't want to see that.
It shows, Ken Strong, that's the last comment, Carl, go ahead.
Ken Strong, representing myself. Appreciate what you guys go through. I've done it myself, so. Anyway, the reason that the lions were delisted or whatever you turned into you didn't have to have a permit to go get them, was to save our deer herd. And that was the reason that they did it. You realize for every deer killed on the highway, there are multiple and a high multiple deer killed by a lion. That's how bad the deer herd's getting, and the lions are causing it. Lions also affect beef and cattle. By the spring of next year, the steers, the talk is that a steer will reach $6,000. And right now, a day-old bull calf, is selling for $1,500. We need to control the predators. The houndsman, I love to hunt, and I'm a grouse hunter. And I can't get around much, but I take my grandkids and I turn my dogs loose and I drive down the road in my side-by-side. When the dogs go on point, I tell the kids where the dogs are. I learned this from the houndsman. You put a tracking collar on your dog and you could track it. In my case, for 9 miles. They were the ones that recommended it. Now, if that's the case and they're losing dogs in snares, they ought to be able to find out where they're at and save them, because if the dog's been on a chain, he's not going to fight it. And the other thing is, when you're walking on these trails with your dog, by law, you have to have it on a leash. So that really shouldn't be a problem. And then you mentioned the feedback that you're getting. How much of that feedback is from hunters and so forth, or how much of it is for the antis that want to do away with lions? They want to do away with trapping, and they want to do away with hunting. I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned that we lost scopes on muzzleloaders. We lost scopes in the northern end of the state, scopes down here in the southern end of the state for deer hunters on rifles, not just muzzleloaders. We'll never get it back, probably never will. But once we've lost something, it's probably gone. And I did hear in the northern RAC, the other day. One of the guys that were anti says it's a good first step. And I don't know what a good first step to what is, but I have my ideas. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to public comment at this time and open it up for RAC discussion. Mike, you wanna lead us off?
Yeah, I can start with it. I agree with all aspects of this, and, you know, I strongly oppose this. I think there's some opportunity here for both sides of the spectrum, not only for the houndsmen, the trappers, the lions, the wildlife, the public, the general public that use our lands. And to identify this as, you know, as we've heard, the first step, we get plenty taken away from us. And there's always some kind of we can get to that middle ground without it taking away from us completely. I strongly oppose this as the way it's presented. I do believe it needs to be a rethought or just completely laid out and not do it at all, because the minimum amount that the division has with it, you know, not the amount that what the UDAF has done with lethal snaring, it's not that big of an effect in my eyes. And as Ken alluded, you know, on our public lands, if you're hiking down a trail, it's state law that says you will have your dog on a 6-foot leash on Forest Service ground, on BLM. If you're hiking down a trail, if you choose to let your dog off a leash, as I do, I was a houndsman. I have hunting dogs. We turn our dog loose on grouse, and she goes for miles. I choose to do that, and I take that risk. I let that go. Nobody else makes that risk or makes that recommendation for me to let that dog go. If I came home without that dog alive, I'm a dead man. I promise you. I am a dead man, and I take that risk wholeheartedly, and that dog was worth a lot of money. So I agree with a lot of the conversations and a lot of the things, but I don't agree with pushing this and implementing this law to take something away from somebody that's passionate about what they do. We're all passionate about what we do, but I do believe there can be some common ground.
Thanks, Mike. Chris?
I want to first say that I'm not anti-trapping, and used to love to trap muskrats as a kid down by the railroad tracks. So remind everybody, though, that we have in the past removed lethal means to control predators. We've removed M44 cyanide devices, and you know, you wouldn't turn your dog loose. You know, you get out there and there's the sign saying they're using them. Incredibly effective at eliminating coyotes, but you know, we did remove those, and I hear there's talk about bringing those back, and I hope that doesn't happen. We've removed using strychnine, you know, lacing a corpse with strychnine that the coyotes or whatever come in and feed on, and you know, up grouse hunting, and my buddy's dog got into one that was illegally laced and died in the back seat of the truck. So lethal things, we have controlled those in the past, and I think most of us would agree with that those are dangerous, and we're happy those are gone. I love that. I thought there was some great compromise in here from the houndsman, Kelly. You know, you guys, and when Kelly walked in, I said, I wish somebody had shown me what a relaxing snare is. You know, why can't we move toward using a snare? My question is, and maybe Kelly, I'll just address that to you, is a relaxing snare equally as effective at catching and holding a lion?
Oh yeah, they'll hold lion without any problem.
And so a coyote?
Yes, but we don't want to get started to where we're required to use a relaxing lock on coyotes, because canines and cats are built a lot different.
I'm just wondering, you know, I mean, I heard compromise, so
yeah,
I'm just.
and we, you know, that's what I'm saying. It sets specifically for cougars. You know, we would be good with the requirement of being a relaxing lock on those. Once set out in the field, you're out in the sagebrush and stuff for coyotes. A little different story on snared coyotes. They fight it a lot different.
Yeah,
That,
I understand what
that
you're saying.
killing snare is much, much better on the coyote than relaxing mode. It's better for the coyote. It's better for the fur. It's just a better all around situation.
I run my dog, grouse hunting. I run my dog out chucker hunting, been in plenty of bobcat traps. And, again, when you read through our regulations, they define what a legal trap is and how much of a gap and stuff there needs to be in a foothold trap. So it's not like we haven't regulated trapping to some degree. So I worry about the ethical part of catching a female that you can't release if that's leaving dependent kittens. I question the ethics of that. I remember taking a trap over to catch my neighbor's rat under their chicken coop, a little kid. And I went over and set it and thinking that's the only thing I'd catch. And I went back to check my trap and it was gone. I figured that rat must have got caught, by the tail and dragged off my trap. And about 2 days later, my neighbor a few doors down the other way, I could hear her in crying, talking to my mom. My cat came home with this big metal trap, So, sometimes we also maybe catch unintended things in lethal traps. I have a friend that's a trapper and using snares and said he quit using them. He was setting a snare where, animals are coming under a fence and ended up catching a couple of fawns that he killed. So I'm just wondering about, if there's such a thing as a non-lethal snare. I also, somebody brought up, and I think it's true that in this proposal, we're just saying a lethal trap is, quote, a trap that kills the animal quickly. I think we need to have a better definition in that proposal as to what a lethal trap is. I think that's pretty vague. Again, I'm not anti-trapping. I'm just trying to find common ground. And so those are my concerns. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Chris. Bart, go ahead.
Okay. So few points. As I mentioned earlier, I probably should have saved those for this part instead of the questions portion. So sorry about that. I generally am in favor of this policy. I heard a lot of people talk about this idea of a slippery slope, and I don't think many people then have a long history of the same question people were, or the same statement people were making back in around 2019 when I first got on the RAC. And there was this slippery slope fear about managing cougars in Utah. And if we put restrictions on leg traps, then it would be a slippery slope and there wouldn't be any, cougar hunting allowed in Utah. And so that caused a lot of consternation, and it still passed. I think it was implemented. I mean, it was kind of close to when they disallowed any sort of trapping in, I think it was Nevada or Arizona. I can't remember which. And so everybody claimed this slippery slope argument. And that is not the case. Obviously, that did not happen. The slope actually went the other direction. So I really don't, this fear mongering of a slippery slope just doesn't hold water, at least here in Utah. So, the comments about on BLM, you have to have a dog on leash. No, state law may say you do, but federal law is what's enforceable on BLM or forest land. And it's the laws or the rules as passed by the field office or the forest office on those trails that determines whether you need to have a leash or under voice control or such like that. And a lot of people seem to, I really wish there were more or watchable wildlife people at these meetings so we could hear from other people, but we don't seem to have that. I think most people don't think there's any point in saying anything because it's nothing really typically goes that direction. And so, and that's fine. I mean, that's just the nature of how we manage wildlife in Utah. But I don't think it's a tough ask to say no snares. And I'm not a hunter. I'm not a trapper. I'm not against people doing that either. But I do think that the landscape here is for everybody to use. And I like not having lethal snares that could threaten my dogs who, you know, I don't stay on trails when I hike, and my dogs are under voice control. But, you know, 30 feet, 40 feet, and I'm out in rough country, not, you know, easy country. And so it is a fear. And I know there are lions around where I go because I see the scat, I see the lion kills. And it's just, there is a fear that there are snares out there. And I just think it's a good policy. There are other means to hunt mountain lions and use those. That's all I have.
Sorry. Excuse me. So prior to this meeting, I wasn't excited about this meeting. I've been very disappointed with our legislature passing laws that affect sportsmen without real sportsman input, privatized conversations that they have, and they do this. Prior to this, when this came up, tell you what, I'm still not very. I don't feel the division made the right choice in bringing this up the way they did. And I haven't been happy with the division, the way they go. Feel like you've pitted one sportsman's group against another. Last night, we went on a deer tour with some of the biologists, and we learned about the money that gets spent for taking care of our deer herds, taking care of all of our wildlife. And that is a great amount of money. If you go and learn about it, you understand what it takes to try and bring these herds back. I've been disappointed with lots of my friends who are houndsmen. I think they brought a anti-hunter element into this over something that the division done when they started trapping certain units without including all the players. Prior to that, it was the legislature that passed that, allowing the cougars to all be killed. At the time, I'll tell you right now, I thought that was the best thing ever because I'm all for mule deer. And when I had hounds, I felt like I'd done something if I had a chance to kill a lion, but felt I was saving mule deer. But I understand we're all sportsmen and we all have our things that we want to see and do. Trappers have been around thousands of years, and now we're going to take something away from them. And two groups that I have friends on both sides are fighting in a way. I don't think that needs to happen. These projects that do happen because of sportsmen. You don't see antis out there trying to save desert sheep. You don't see them out there trying to save lions. You don't see them out there trying to save deer. They're out there trying to sue us and take these things away. And we need to come together as a state, as a sportsman, all together and come to common ground, even when it hurts that maybe we don't get something we want. Cougar hunters have been hurt and they got kicked by the legislature. It shouldn't have went that way. It probably ought to be looked at, and that should be the division goes back and gets them to change that, where the division manages those cougars once again. But we actually manage them and we don't try to appease people. And that's how this feels tonight. They tried to appease one little thing and split us. That should not be that way. I don't think this passed here tonight. It may pass the wildlife board because they don't seem to much care what the southern region says anymore. They don't want to listen to what's in our backyard anymore. They want to listen to the big voices, ones with the big money that can tell them. That's what we want to do. The ones that get their conservation money and sell their tags for them and then have to agree on 35%. This may have been the best system years ago, but as of late, it has not been. This is impressive to see this many people show up to a RAC meeting just when I was giving up on it. We really need to rethink how we go about things. We don't want them suing us, and everybody needs to stay at the table and what happens to our wildlife. I'm sure I had more than that, but we'll see where this goes. I ramble on all night, so.
Thanks, Frank. I just wanted to share a couple of my thoughts. In the late 80s, when I was just a wee little pup, I grew up going to the oldie from Mountain Men Rendezvous at Blacksmith Fort Canyon in Cache Valley, and remember watching the blacksmiths work metal and learning about fur trade. And there's some spark that gets in you, and it got in me when I was young, of we're more than just people placed in the 20th century. Like, we have a heritage of being trappers, of being hunters, of being connected. Now everything in this world is taking us away from that, and it's hard. I'm raising a bunch of kids right now, and to teach them to hunt and be outdoorsmen is not easy. None of them drew deer tags. None of them drew elk tags. What do you do? And so my fear is, if I don't give them more opportunities to maybe learn how to trap, to learn how to put a camera out and go take pictures, to learn how to do something that doesn't involve getting a coveted permit out of the draw and hunting, they are not going to grow up to be outdoorsmen. And that scares me. As far as what is lethal, what is not, what is okay, what is not, it's hard to kill an animal. It's dang hard. They have feelings. They have things they want to do in life. They want to create more animals. They want to have joy in their little sphere. And it's not easy to take a life. But when you go out there with a trap, a snare, a rifle, a bow, you are prepared to kill. And I think you have to make that decision. And you know, you might do it differently than I do. You might like shooting a bull elk in the lungs and watching him bleed out and suffer. Maybe that's okay. You may want to only be a rifle hunter. That's okay too. You may be a trapper. I think to each his own. And when we try to manage each other based on how we think it should be, in my mind, is wrong. I want less regulations. We're protected here. It's not the 1800s, I know, but I'm not in favor of taking one thing out just to nitpick it. Pretty soon we make it so hard, I can't teach my kids to do it. They're not even going to want to do it because they got to read an encyclopedia to figure out how to become a trapper, and that scares me. So I want to get back to our roots on hunting, which is spending time with family, killing an animal that has feelings, harvesting the meat, being proud of what you killed, and hunting for whatever makes you happy, and that's it. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else? Ready for a motion? Brian?
I motion that we don't pass this and that we ask the division to sit down amongst themselves and come back with something better for the trappers, for the houndsmen. See if they can get the lion management back where the houndsmen can have something too, but also the houndsmen are going to have to understand that the lions do take a lot of deer. We can't run a lion every time we go off one road just because we want to. I think this all goes back to the deer herd and those things, but we need to send it up that way.
Motion, but we'll try to capture it. So Brian's motion is to deny the proposal and to ask the division to come up with something better, includes involving the stakeholders. Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough. I'm pretty tied to this stuff, so.
Do we have a second on his motion?
I'll back it up.
Second by Gary. Any discussion needed?
I still would like to see wording in there, at least for lions then, to use a relaxing snare, if that is as equally as effective, without going for lethal snares for coyotes or, so that would be my proposal or amendment to that word. So let me clarify. What I would say is that I would vote against the proposal to end all use of lethal snares on public ground with an amendment that lion snares should be using a relaxing. In other words, you can still use a lethal snare for coyotes or other predators, but on lion set specific, they should be using a relaxing snare.
I don't think we can put that amendment on top of his motion. That's contrary to his.
Okay.
Yeah. I gotta decide what to do. Now, we vote on this motion.
Can we discuss that?
Yeah, we can discuss.
Chris, what I see is at this point, until they come up with something better, there's a high more likelihood of dogs getting caught in snares for a coyote or snares for a bobcat. And if we leave that in, why are we taking it out on lions? But right now, I don't know that this is so much that there's that part of the lions that this is actually, in my opinion, this isn't coming down to how many dogs have all of a sudden been getting hurt because of these guys hunting lions, but it's coming down more to everything that's been taken away from the houndsmen and they've been hurt. And this was one way that they were able to come back and try and get something. Now we need to realize they're part of the sportsman and get them something back. But
I think we'd all like to see the Fish and Game take back control of the mountain lions, you know, in general. I don't think, and at least this proposal is giving the Fish and Game an ounce of control back. But I don't agree with the proposal in general for use to remove lethal snares. And like I said, I'm not anti-trapping. I know for every bobcat that's caught, I've got another 2 dozen chuckers to chase. And I know that that's true of mountain lions here. I understand that. So maybe I would say that the division should relook at this proposal and reword it, rethink it, table it for more discussion.
Now, to be clear, that would be very similar to his motion, right?
Yeah.
His motion, as stated, is to reject the proposal from the division and ask the DWR to come back with something better with input from houndsmen, trappers, and constituents. That's kind of the end of your motion.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Still same motion, Brian?
yes.
Second from Mike? No, second from Gary.
Okay.
Any other discussion needed? Okay, let's vote on Brian's motion. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, it's unanimous here in the room and the Brooklyn as well. All those opposed, raise your hand. Rachel and Bart opposed. So motion passes 6-2 to reject the proposal as presented. Rachel, Bart, would you like to speak to your no vote and more than we already have?
I think I've spoken enough. I've spoken enough.
Thanks, Bart.
Okay, I guess I should say that I also am not against hunting and trapping, and I think there's a lot of fear that the watchable wildlife community is definitely against that, and I have not seen that. But just to go back to the point that Chad made in the very beginning, I do think that the cost benefit concern right now makes sense to pause that. And I also think this is not going to be the last time we talk about this. I think it will come back. I am for suggesting new trapping methods. I'm just for suggesting new education. So I think it will come up again, but I think I support the recommendation right now.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. All right, that ends agenda item number 9. Let's move on to agenda item number 10, use of division land rules. Chelsea Duke.
Okay, can you hear me? Awesome.
We gotcha.
All right, thanks you guys. You know, that was a lot, so I appreciate you sticking with me. I just wanted to give a quick overview about this rule change because I didn't come in person last year. I just came on the monitor and just talked to you a little bit because the law that passed last year didn't really impact any other region than Northern and Central. So just to give a little bit of background, in 2025, the Utah legislature passed House Bill 309, and in that bill, it became required that a person visiting a WMA in a class 1 or 2 county would be required to have a hunting or fishing license to be on a WMA. And that impacted 30 WMAs, mostly along the Wasatch Front, so only in Northern and Central region. It did require some additional rule changes, which is why I took it through the RAC and board cycle. And then after a lot of public comment, the legislature decided to pass a new law this year in the 2026 session, and that was from House Bill 30, and it made changes to that law. And so now the law is you can either have a hunting, fishing, or combo license to access a WMA, or you can go this free digital access permit route and watch an educational video, accept a statement about limited access, and then we have to offer to ask for a donation if you want to contribute to WMAs. And with this new law for House Bill 30, that rolls out this requirement to all WMAs across the state over a 3-year period. So this first year, it will only apply to those class 1 and 2 counties, and then it's going to roll out in a 3-year term to all WMAs. So it will be impacting southern region wildlife management areas over the next 2 years. So that's my little spiel I wanted to add, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick, the digital access with $40 allowed for a fishing. Does that include non-residents?
That is a great question. Let me look at what we proposed. I think we did just stick with the resident fee just because it's a little convoluted how we have to treat the digital access permit. We can't issue a fishing license. We have to allow you to fish using that digital access permit.
Okay, I just didn't see whether it was for residents and non-residents. That was, in your presentation, I didn't see.
That's a great question. Let me just.
It says in the back, if a person contributes an amount equal or greater to the resident fishing license.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I didn't.
For the fee schedule, so I don't think it matters if they're non-resident.
I didn't see it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you catching that.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Public comments received online. Did we get one?
We have one public comment that strongly supported, and good work. If you can catch Chelsea off guard, you're doing good.
All right, I have no public comment cards on this agenda item. RAC discussion. This has been a moving target the last few years, so if we can figure out WMA access, that'll be great for the state of Utah. Entertain a motion.
I have a question.
Yeah,
on the wildlife management area, if there's a road that goes through it, is that person liable to have a permit to
No, that's a great question. So part of the legislation, there was a list of exemptions, and traveling on a highway through a wildlife management area is one of those exemptions.
So what if it's a very limited, rough road? Well, for instance, the Indian Peaks is a wildlife management area. There's many roads that travel through for, you know, from the cattlemen, everybody crosses through there. Do they all have to have a permit to
So-
stall?
So if you're traveling through, that's the language of the bill says if you're traveling through the WMA on a highway, then you do not need either of these options. And then also if you are retrieving livestock, then you don't. And also one of the exemptions too, it's all existing property rights are still honored. So you don't need the hunting, fishing, or combo or the digital access permit. So if we have a neighbor landowner that has an easement through the property and can get to their property, they don't need either of these options. But if there's no, like if it's just a road on a WMA that can be seasonally closed, then you would have to have either of these options. Unfortunately, Gary is not here tonight to speak to specific WMAs in your region, but we would have to look at the habitat management plan to see which roads would fall under that category.
My concern is just access, to an area that is highly used. For, minor pickers, hunters, everybody, that's really its uses, If everybody has to have one of those, then it seems like it just makes it complicated.
And then I could just speak to that. I think that was some of the feedback that the legislature heard this year. I don't want to speak for them, but there was a lot of non-consumptive users and people using wildlife management areas in non-traditional ways that they weren't originally purchased for. And it was individuals who had a hard time with needing to receive a hunting and fishing license to be able to recreate on those properties. And so that's why the free option was what the legislature proposed as this middle ground. So you're still being educated on what wildlife management areas are, why they were purchased, what we do with them, and then also not required to pay for a consumptive license.
So tell me if I'm wrong, but the state of Utah is a strange state in the fact that you don't have to have a valid hunting license to go hunting if you have a valid permit. But the way this rule reads, you must have a valid hunting license to be on a WMA, correct?
If you choose that option, if you don't have a valid license, fishing license, hunting license, or a combo license, then you have to have the digital access permit, which would be free. So you have to have one of those two options.
That's the only thing I personally would like to see cleaned up in state code is you have to have a license to apply or purchase a permit in the state, but you do not have to have a license to actually go hunting. That's a misconception in Utah. If you have the permit, you're able to go as long as you had a license when you bought it. And all of you DWR officials are welcome to check me on that, but we probably need to clean that up because someone could say, well, I got my permit. I'm good. I'm up hunting elk on a WMA. But if you don't have a valid hunting, fishing, or combo on that date, you're illegally accessing that property, correct?
I can discuss that with our legislative team.
Ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass it as is. This didn't seem quite right last year when it came up, and I think you're getting there. I think what Austin just brought up could easily be changed just by considering the tag valid hunting license as is. So I'd have to that is.
Motion from Brian to pass as presented. Second from Mike. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed? Russell's opposed. Would you like to speak to that?
Maybe I don't understand it, but it seems like it confuses it, especially on the Indian Peaks wildlife. Just makes another hurdle for people to have to worry about whether they're permitted for.
being there.
Copy. Okay, motion passes 7-1. Thank you. All right, let's go to agenda item number 11, wildlife consultation procedure for renewable energy facilities. Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, is it okay if I provide some really brief background on this one, since it's not a normal agenda item? This year, the legislature passed 2 bills that require the owners or operators of solar and wind farms to consult with DWR on their projects. In addition to that, one of the bills requires DWR to write an administrative rule describing how that consultation process works. And so that's what this item is about. Just a rule that describes how that consultation will happen with these owners and operators. And one point of clarification, the bills that passed didn't give DWR the authority to approve or deny these projects. It just requires them to talk to us about the projects for us to give them recommendations that can reduce the impacts on wildlife. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Any questions for Daniel? Brooklyn, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious. We don't have a lot of federal permitting going on right now for renewable energy, but is this something that you intend to do for federal land as well, or just private?
Yes, this will apply to all land ownerships. So you're right, there's not a lot of solar happening on federal land right now, but it's kind of shifted more towards private and state-owned lands where these solar projects are happening. But at some point in the future, it ramps back up on federal lands, this will apply to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, we already do, sorry, I'm losing my voice, but we're already doing so much like consultation when we do those kind of federal actions. And so I just was curious, I mean, is the intent to kind of add, sorry, stipulations and things like that? Or is there, I mean, I guess just overall consultation, not necessarily concurrence, but I guess we already do that so much, I guess is my concern.
It's a really good point, Brooklyn. There are a lot of companies that consult us already on their projects. We provide recommendations. It's just kind of more formalizing the project. And like I said before, it's not regulatory, so the companies aren't required to adopt any of the recommendations we propose.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brooklyn.
Did you call me?
Yeah, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Is this consultation guidance kind of just not really a rubber stamp, but it just seemed like it will happen within the allotted time period? Is there, what actual review or assessment are you going to make to them?
Yeah, so we'll identify what species are occurring in that project area and then evaluate how they're laying out their facility and the fencing they're using, and then provide recommendations to offset those impacts. So for instance, with solar, that most of these facilities have a perimeter fence that's 8 feet tall. So that can have fairly significant impacts on larger animals such as deer and elk. And so we might recommend that the facilities are right in the center of a high use deer and winter range. You might suggest that they think about finding alternative sites for that because the impacts are so big. Other things that we can do, sometimes these facilities might be placed in a migration corridor or having this fencing would block that migration route. And so we can recommend things like separating the facility into two locations or splitting it apart. So there's a movement corridor through the facility so the animals can still move through that area. There's like types of things that we can recommend to help reduce the impacts on wildlife.
So and these recommendations are purely that, just recommendations. There's no ability to enforce at the state level or from the state?
Yeah, but I think it gives us more of a formal seat at the table. So the way the bill is written, the owner comes to DWR and says, we need to consult on this project. We meet with them. We'll send them a letter with our recommendations. When the project proponents go to get permitting, so that they take it to the county and try to get the permitting, They have to show proof that they consulted with DWR. They also have to have a description of how they're going to address the recommendations that we made. And then the county's also required to consider those recommendations in their permitting process. So while we don't have authority to say yes or no on these projects, I think we have more ability to influence how they happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fire. Any other questions? Questions from the public? No online public comments? No public comments here in person. All right. Let's go back to discussion and entertain a motion.
Discussion.
Any discussion needed? No? Ready for a motion? Who's up?
I'll make a motion that we pass the proposal as written.
I'll second it.
A motion by Chris to pass as presented, second by Russell. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous, 8-0. Thank you. All right. Agenda item, does anybody need a break? Are we good? Agenda item number 12, white sturgeon introduction and regulations. We have Mr. Craig Walker online joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
We got you.
Perfect. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight. I just want to give you a quick recap before you guys pose some questions to me. The presentation that you all had an opportunity to view was regarding the proposed introduction of white sturgeon in Grantsville Reservoir in Tooele County and Hobbs Reservoir in Davis County. We're seeking board approval of a catch and release regulation for white sturgeon on both of these waters. That proposed introduction is part of a broader effort that you might have seen last year during my informational presentation regarding increasing angler opportunity. And that is a key goal for us to move forward with as we face these challenging conditions that we're trying to manage fisheries through.
Any questions for Craig? Questions from the public? Other comment?
I apologize. We did have one public comment. Strongly supported this.
I do have one public comment card on this one. All right, number 12, Ken Strong. Welcome to come on up.
And Strong, representing Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife. We're happy to see the division look outside the box, bring in a new species. I think Utah has been a leader in fishing for a while, the things that are going on. And I'd like to thank those involved with the passing of, or with the introduction to sturgeon if it goes through. And if any of you have questions, there's a gentleman right there that knows everything there is to know about sturgeon. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. All right, RAC discussion on this one. Has anybody ever caught a white sturgeon before?
Sounds cool.
It's cool.
Oh, I'll ask Craig a question while we'll go back to that. So what is, why did you choose those locations for white sturgeon? What was the criteria that you were looking at?
Sure. So when the opportunity presented itself via a grower in southern Utah, who you might know, out of Beaver, and SFW coming forward, we conferred with all 5 regions in the state, and we asked them if there were places where they felt that they could manage with this species to provide an opportunity and diversify a fishery in a water body that would not have escapement, and we could manage safely with this species as we examined its potential as a management tool moving forward. We got a handful of waters. None of those came from the southern region. And we chose 2 because we got a total of 100 fish to distribute between waters in the state. And we felt that 2 would allow us to put 50 fish into each water. And if there were mortalities, allow them to persist and allow us to kind of, again, examine this through time and still have some fish to play with over the years.
Answer your question. On the catch and release, is it like other states where you can't remove them from the water and stay in the water?
You know, we struggle with that, or struggled with that a long time ago. You know, this is going to be a unique species for people to see and interact with. We anticipate that people are going to catch them, are going to want to have a photo opportunity, but then, you know, trying to get them back in the water as quickly as possible is what we would encourage as part of a catch and release regulation.
Am I wrong there, Craig? Like, isn't it Idaho where if you catch them, you cannot remove them from the water, at least?
Yeah, and we're not in kind of a conservation mode with these populations that we're managing. And what you're talking about there is also larger individuals that are not allowed for harvest. And trying to manipulate those larger individuals outside of the water causes probably more harm than good as far as injury goes. I think that's why a lot of those regulations are in place that way.
Thank you. Any other discussion or entertain a motion? Ready, Mike?
I'll make a motion to pass presented.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Motion from Mike to pass as presented, second from Brian. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous, 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Craig. Have a great night.
Take care, guys.
That is our last action item on the agenda. Now we're going to go to some informational items. That's for last. Yankee Meadow WMA with Michaela Roundy, program manager.
It's actually aquatics biologist. I don't know why it's just having that programming.
That's not right. This is the all right. Apologize for that. You're good. Talk to us.
Hey, so the habitat management plan. It's been about 20 years since it was written, so it's time for a review. It's been about the last year reviewing this habitat management plan. We decided it was a perfect opportunity to combine a fisheries management plan with it. So we did a little on the ground survey last year up there. We had a technician there doing some interviews between Memorial Day and Labor Day, collecting some data for us and learning what anglers and how people use the WMA. And now we put together a few goals to manage the fishery. There we go. And awesome.
Thank you. Any questions? There's no motions or votes on these informational items. Do you have any questions? There's a lot of use days on Yankee Meadow, and we were talking about that with Habitat Council.
Yeah, it's a very popular place, both for recreation and just other uses, picnickers, photographers, bird watchers. So it gets used very heavily.
All right. No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You've never been to Yankee Meadows. It's good. All right, number 14, Carolyn Valley, WMA.
Hello, I'm virtual, unfortunately not able to make it in person, but yeah, let's tell you a little bit about the Huron Valley WMA Habitat Management Plan revision. Again, same situation. The Habitat Management Plan was last done about 20 years ago, so it's due for revision. Huron Valley WMA is really different than all of the other WMAs in the state. It's actually specifically for Utah prairie dog conservation. It's not meant for public recreation. And so we just adjusted some of the language in the habitat management plan revision. And then we also focused in the habitat management plan revision on managing the habitat for Utah prairie dogs, trying to increase species richness, and then as well as managing some of the human wildlife conflict with the adjacent landowners on the property. So yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on the prairie dog? Brooklyn, go ahead.
Sorry, Barbara, I'm sure this is a silly question, but the WMA prairie dogs, they still go towards like the spring count and stuff like that. They still go towards like animal increase numbers. What are they called? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So they're still considered a protected property. And so they go towards like the protected, so the recovery goals for Utah prairie dogs, because they're a federally threatened species. So the recovery goal is 1,000 counted, spring counted adult prairie dogs on public or protected land. So they qualify towards that protected land. Yeah.
Okay, great. I just want to transfer a bunch over there if they don't count.
There's plenty of them in there.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate your time. The good work you're doing out there.
Thank you.
And we have one more. The East Fork Spirit River WMA.
All right, my name is Oakley Toomer. I'm an aquatics biologist for the Southern region. So yeah, similar to both of these guys, is my management plan encompasses 2 WMAs, Kingston Canyon and Black Canyon. They're very similar properties and managed very similarly. So the main reason that we own those properties is for angling access. So that was kind of the big thing that we wanted to keep going forward with this management plan, and also try to improve some big game habitat on the WMAs. So I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions, real quick? Keeping the cattle out of the creek up there?
So it is managed. There's a permittee that we allow grazing on. And part of the management plan too, we're going to add a 4th pasture. Currently there's only 3 pastures. So that'll that 4th pasture will add an extra year of rotation to keep the cattle off the creek and keep that riparian area healthy.
Thanks, Oakley.
All right, thank you.
Keep up the good work. Okay, that ends our agenda for the night. Do we have any other items to be brought up? On the board meeting for all these agenda items would be June 11th at Farmington Bay at the Echoes Wildlife Education Center. So any comments can be submitted there. That's directly to the board for that next meeting. And then our next Southern Region RAC meeting will be back in Cedar City. Let's see, is that August 4th? Sound right? Sounds right.
I'm trying to remember what I have to do tomorrow.
Dax is gonna eat breakfast tomorrow. That's as far as he's got. But we'll see everybody August 4th. Have a great summer if we don't see you at the board meeting. And motion to adjourn. Mike makes a motion. Anybody opposed? Have a great night.
I don't.